Trade union Nahau gives government an ultimatum: respond to demands today or face a 2-day stay away and a national strike. Hawks confirm Ajay Gupta is still a wanted person in South Africa. This as the High Court is set to hear a bid to overturn an order that led to the freezing of Gupta assets over the Estina dairy farm scandal. A referendum is being held today that could allow Pierre Nkurunziza, president of Burundi, to stay in power for another 16 years.
It's okay, you played Barcelona, you should be okay. You can do better, to be honest. But my boys tried.
It's an opportunity for the visiting
Mamelodi Sundowns coach Peter Mane applauds the effort of his team, despite the PSL champions going down 3-1 to Barcelona.
Hello and welcome to SABC Newsroom. I'm Shante Yankees. Thank you very much for joining us. A very happy Thursday to you. Coming up this hour, we touch base with the Palestinian correspondent for the latest in the violence on the Gaza Strip. I'm not alone. Valen Kirtley is standing by with all your sporting highlights. Very good morning to you, Valen. Very good fight that our boys put up yesterday, I must say.
You were there, you enjoyed it, and I think all of South Africa did. It was absolutely fantastic, the Mamelodi Sundowns Barcelona match.
Yeah, definitely was. They do say that, sport is something that manages to unite people whatsoever. So it was a great experience, yeah.
Yeah, as Madiba will say, sport has the power to change the world and unite people in a way that little else does. And every time we have a big sporting occasion, we get to see that. So let's bring you your sports news, but only at about 1:15 to the top of the hour here on Newsroom. Good morning to you. I look forward to bringing that to you. But let's go back to you, Shante, for your top news story.
Your lead story at 9 o'clock. A case to overturn an order to freeze Gupta assets will be heard in the High Court in Bloemfontein today. The Gupta assets were seized by the Asset Forfeiture Unit as a result of the ongoing investigation in more than 220 million rand Estina dairy farm scandal. Meanwhile, the Hawks say a warrant of arrest for Ajay Gupta is still active. Ajay Gupta is currently in Sarampur in India.
Ajay Gupta told the media he wants to set the record straight for the people of his hometown. He claims he was maligned by the press in South Africa, saying the media in this country have an agenda against him. He says his family has always worked honestly and ethically. He declined all allegation of state capture against him and his family in South Africa, and also dismissed the question about the court cases against him in the country.
They can file as many cases against me as they like. They will not win a single case. My family has worked honestly and ethically. We have never worked with the government. Out of all our companies, our turnover that is linked to the government is only from 1 to 7%. So I don't understand how we have allegedly benefited from the government. We've not benefited at all.
Gupta also says that Duduzane Zuma became their business partner in South Africa way before his father Jacob Zuma was elected president in 2009. The Hawks says that they believe they have a strong case against the Gupta family.
Status quo remains. There is still a warrant of arrest against Mr. Ajay Gupta. We have been on record to say that that matter is still within our hands.
Justice Minister Michael Masuta has told journalists in Cape Town that South Africa is working with the United Arab Emirates with a view to establish an extradition and legal assistance agreement. The Hawks has promised to pursue this case.
For the latest on the matter with SABC's Apumalela Mdlalane, she's joining us from Bloemfontein. Very good morning to you. Please give us an update on the matter regarding the Guptas in the Bloemfontein High Court this morning.
A very good morning to you, Shante, and also to the viewers at home. We can confirm now that gloves are off once again between the state and also the Gupta family. We know that they have approached the High Court here in Bloemfontein to overturn the order that said that the Asset Forfeiture Unit, they seized their assets. The assets, of course, which include 43 properties and also the luxury cars as well as 3 3 aircrafts. The Gupta councils, they did say here at the High Court last week that they believe that they have a strong case, and also now they are here to say that the assets that were seized have nothing to do with the raid that took place last month in Johannesburg, which was connected to, we know, the Estina Dairy Farm investigation that has been going on. But also on the other side, we know that the state did mention that they wanted to postpone the matter to this week because they did mention that their counsel was not available. But with me now, I'm joined by the legal expert, Mr. Lebohang Mogele. A very good morning to you, sir.
Thank you, Pumlela. Thanks for having me.
What would you say, what would likely to be transpired this morning here? Because we know that the state last week did ask for postponement, saying that they are not, their counsels are not available. But now we know that the Gupta have accused them, saying that they are playing delaying tactics.
Pumlela, the first thing that we need to understand is that the purpose of the preservation order is for the state to have rather a hold on these people so that they can proceed with the investigations that are pending. One being the one for the Estina farm, as well as the state capture investigation, which still has to be in suit. And without them being here, and without any asset, without any of their asset being withheld by the state will not have any hold so that they can proceed with any investigations. And this matter is the only thing that the state has against them, so that they can proceed with any investigations that they would still have to do with the Guptas.
It's very interesting that also in their affidavit, the Gupta side, the acting CEO did mention that the state is incompetent. What is your take on that?
I doubt that the state would be incompetent, because we also need to understand that part of the investigations is that one of the people that are linked in the investigations, they still have to be questioned, and they also have to be interviewed. And without, like, the allegations that have been made by Ajay Gupta that they will not be in the country so that they can be investigated, and all these delays, they cannot be imputed on the state. These are the delays that they have brought to themselves, because if then they would make themselves available, that they can be interviewed and the investigations can then proceed, then this matter can then be brought to finality. But without their presence in the country, then it would still cause the delay, and the asset would have to be freezed so that they can come and answer to the allegations that have been leveled against them.
At this moment in time, would we say that the state has a strong case?
With the allegations that they have done against the Guptas, I personally believe that they really have a strong case. And without the assets again, there's nothing that the state will have against them if the same assets can then be unfreezed or rather be released to them. So I would believe that this matter serves a fundamental process in the investigations in the Estina farm, as well as the state capture investigations that they will still have to be proceeded against them.
All right, Natasha, that was our legal expert, Lebohang Mogele, just giving us a glimpse of what is likely to transpire inside the court today. We know that the court proceedings are expected to begin at 9:30. We also saw that the Gupta side counsels have already made their way to the court, but we haven't seen, we know that we're expecting Luvuyo Mfaki, who's from the NPA side, to also come here, because we would like to talk to him later on after the proceedings, so that we can hear what is their feeling about the case. But we know that last week they did mention that to us, that the state is ready to investigate more on this matter, and they still believe that they have a strong case against the Guptas.
Thank you very much. SABC's Apumalele Mdlalane will have to wait and see what transpires out of the Bloemfontein High Court this morning. Some other news: police are investigating the murder of a Meadowlands police station commander. The police officer was shot and killed as he arrived at his home in Proteas South in Soweto last night. Authorities are trying to establish the circumstances leading to the shooting. Preliminary reports indicate that the brigadier had just arrived home when he was accosted by unknown suspects who then shot at him. The senior police manager was then rushed to a nearby hospital where he was certified dead. Well, trade union Nahawu has given government an ultimatum. It wants its demands for better working conditions and the removal of Supra Mahmupelo as Premier of the Northwest met by today. If not, the union has threatened to embark on a 2-day stay away involving all public servants in the region, as Senteng Lehihi reports.
A national day of action as thousands of Nehau members flocked to the northwest in solidarity with their comrades in the province following a 3-month-long strike to better working conditions in the public health sector that have been compromised by the outsourcing of key functions.
8 provinces are a problem. We are not paid our money, we are not paid our assessment, we are not paid things that we are entitled to. We want to tell those who think that you are lapdogs, we are desk of the government, that you're wrong. We are going to fight.
The memorandum of demands was received by Minister of Health, Aaron Motsoaledi.
We have agreed with most of the issues that are demanded, and we are doing them. But obviously some can be done immediately, others it's medium, some will be long term. I'm not going to sit there and lie.
Meanwhile, the head of the interministerial task team, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, did not divulge the contents of the preliminary report about its 3-week-long probe into the governance of Northwest, and said that ministers with departments in the Northwest will be in the province to map the way forward after it has been placed under administration. Nehau says, should government fail to respond to their demands by Friday, public servants in the province will embark on a 2-day stay away. Sintle Inglihihi, SABC News, Mahikeng.
Well, a special provincial official funeral has been declared in Mpumalanga for the late veteran photographer Sam Nzima on Saturday, the 26th of May. A memorial service will be held today in Parktown for mourners to remember him and pay their last respects. Nzima died on Saturday at the Rob Pereira Hospital in Bombela in Mpumalanga. He is well known for his historic photo of Hector Peterson being carried by Mbuyisa Makabu after being shot during the 1976 Soweto uprisings. For the special provincial official funeral, all national flags will be flown at half-mast in Mpumalanga. President Cyril Ramaphosa says the veteran photographer will be remembered for his significant contribution through photojournalism during the struggle against apartheid. Meanwhile, loved ones will also gather for the memorial service of Supreme Court Judge Lebotsang Ronnie Bosielo. He passed away at his Kailami home in Midrand, north of Johannesburg. Well, Judge Bosielo will be remembered for his sterling work while serving at various courts around the country before being appointed judge at the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein. He also serves as an acting judge of the Constitutional Court. His memorial service will be held at 1 p.m. at the Cavalry Methodist Church in Midrand. Well, Burundians will vote in a referendum on constitutional changes that could extend incumbent President Pierre Nkurunziza's rule to 2034. The controversial referendum comes amid fears and warnings that the vote may lead to an upsurge of violence and heighten a 3-year political crisis that has left at least 1,200 people dead and seen thousands as refugees flee to neighboring countries. This as Asera Kamani reports.
Burundi's Electoral Commission has put the number of registered voters at just over 4.7 million. Campaigns for and against the vote have been marred by a clampdown on dissenters, according to human rights groups.
We're concerned that it's taking place in a context where there are serious restrictions of freedom of expression.
The international community has expressed concern that the referendum will spark renewed fighting in the East African nation, which has witnessed a 3-year political crisis after President Pierre Nkurunziza's controversial third-term bid in 2015. Over the weekend, 26 people were killed in the northwest of the country by an unknown people. The attacks have raised fears of reprisals against those opposed to the referendum. Among the controversial proposals of the draft constitution is the extension of the presidential term from the current 5 years to 7 years. It allows the president to serve 2 consecutive terms. The draft constitution also proposes the creation of the post of a prime minister and only 1 vice president, whereas the 2005 constitution provides for 2 vice presidents. The prime minister will be appointed from the ruling party, while the vice president will come from a different party. It will be passed if it is approved by over 50% of voters. A yes vote would clear the way for Nkurunziza to run again in 2020 when his current term expires. The opposition says this is a violation of the Arusha Peace Agreement, as it would infringe on national unity.
But it would also bring into question the agreement on ethnic quotas under Arusha. So the revised constitution proposes allowing the Senate to consult on whether or not to maintain the ethnic quotas as they stand.
We are very attached to this Arusha agreement because we have reached many results, stability, reconciliation in Burundi because of that Arusha agreement.
The current constitution sets quotas for parliament, the government and the army, with power shared equally between the two ethnic groups, the Hutus and the Tutsis. The 2005 Arusha Accord ended a decade-long civil war in the country. Sarah Kimani, SABC News.
Well, our question of the day is just on that. Burundians will be voting in a referendum on constitutional changes that would extend incumbent President Pierre Nkurunziza's rule to 2034. Please send us your thoughts on @SABC Newsroom on Twitter. We'll have a look at some of your tweets and comments after the break.
SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
Corruption both in the public and the private sectors needs to be combated.
Where there are clear cases of wrong that has been done, that must commence immediately.
Something is being done about corruption in our country.
Currency, even although it strengthened dramatically after the ANC's recent elective conference, could conceivably go stronger yet.
He had a soul that would not be for sale.
Stay tuned to Your World for your final news roundup, Monday to Sunday at 21:30.
We make sure to be where news is happening,
both locally and globally. For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates every hour.
Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.
32 nations, 44 matches live on SABC1 and 19 SABC radio stations. SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
Welcome back. Well, Burundians will vote in a referendum on constitutional changes that would extend incumbent President Pierre Nkurunziza's rule to 2034. We've asked you to send us your tweets on @SABC Newsroom on Twitter just to get your thoughts on this. Not the first time we're seeing an African president want to change constitutional laws to be able to extend presidential terms. Let's have a look at some of your views and tweets coming through this morning. Well, Cassian says, I wonder the problem with African presidents. They want to rule forever. They must stop and pave the way for others. Polani says Burundians must not support that referendum because it's an abuse of power. Nkurunziza wants to be president for life. Michael says Burundi is a sovereign state, so whatever Burundians vote for should be respected. Yeah, definitely. We're hoping to discuss that in a little bit more detail to have a look at some of the technicalities around presidential terms. Our poll question that we're asking, should companies be fined for failing to ensure equal pay for male and female employees? We do know that this is one of the discussions that was brought up at that ILO international talks in Geneva in Switzerland. 16% of you are saying no, 84% of you are saying yes, just over 470 votes coming in. Let's have a look at some of the commentary behind those numbers. Garabo says that government must first fine companies that pay a certain race more money and other races less. Lungelo says, yes, indeed, the company did fair to afford with equal salaries. And Lekasa says male and female should be paid equal money because they are doing the same job. Yeah, indeed, Lekasa, that's what you would think, but it's not necessarily the case. Thank you very much for participating in both our poll and our question. Let's move over to Facebook now, staying online to see what you can find on the @SABC Newsroom or SABC News. Well, a special provincial official funeral has been declared in Mpumalanga for late veteran photographer Sam Nzima on Thursday, or rather on Saturday. That is the 26th of May. All national flags will also be flown at half-mast in the province. And then Mamelodi Sundowns defender Wayne Arendse will be keeping tight hold on the jersey that he swapped with Lionel Messi after the match at the FNB Stadium yesterday night. And finally, Meghan Markle's father overshadowed his daughter's wedding to Prince Harry by sowing confusion about whether he would walk her down the aisle or snub the British royal family by pulling out of the intricately planned celebration at the last minute. Well, you can find out this and more on our Facebook page, or you can go to SABC News website. Let's have a look now at what's making headlines continentally in Africa this morning in our newspapers. Here at home in South Africa, the Citizen is reporting that Justice Minister Michael Masuta confirms that he is in talks with the United Arab Emirates to fast-track bilateral agreements to specifically have members of the Gupta family repatriated to South Africa to answer questions. In Angola, the Journal de Angola says a total of 105 people died of drowning in Luanda during 2017 to the 2018 bathing season. A spokesperson for the Provincial Command of the Civil Protection and Fire Brigade, Faustino Mngwez, revealed yesterday. In Namibia, the Namibian is reporting that Works Minister John Mutorwa was warned that the Trans-Namib board to stop ignoring him, and that their decision to suspend a fellow board member, Dantagos Jimmy Melani, was illegal. Take a short break here on SABC Newsroom. Do stay tuned.
SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia. SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
No. Yes. Yes.
Sports Live every Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 p.m.
The Western Cape needs national government to fulfill its mandate on ensuring the bulk water supply.
We must ensure that the city of Cape Town never confronts this particular situation again.
The ESCOM is serious about stamping out corruption, which is why the market is now beginning to accommodate us.
Looking at neighboring countries, expecting Botswana just to see partly cloudy skies with a high of 34 in Gaborone.
News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Welcome back. In a surprise move, the ANC in the Northwest is hosting a peace march. This is following the violent protests that have been taking place in the Northwest. The march will be led by embattled Northwest Premier, who is also a provincial chairperson, Supra Mamupelu. For the latest, we are joined by SABC's Oleboheng Khosilentwe. A very good morning to you. What sort of turn of events yesterday at Nahau March? And we're also now seeing today that what's happening with regards to the ANC and their peaceful march that's taking place.
Good morning, Shante. Absolutely. You know, ever since the past couple of weeks, there's been event after event unfolding here in the Northwest Province. Today, as you've just mentioned, we are expecting to see Premier Supra Mahumapelo in his capacity as the chairperson of the African National Congress in the province lead a peaceful march that is meant to be a prayer march meant to unite the community and the province after those violent those violent protests that were calling for him to resign the past couple of weeks. Shante?
Indeed, why is Supra leading the march? Is he not supposed to be on a special leave?
Well, Shante, you'll remember that he is on special leave as the Premier. So in government, he's on special leave, but as the chairperson of the ANC, his duties still continue. So he says that his office rather has told us that this is a march that was embargoed by the PEC last week. So it's been a thing that has been coming. It is an event of the ANC and not of government. So in that regard, then we could say that it's part of the 18 weeks program that he had said as the ANC chairperson he will be going throughout the province and trying in his own way to restore calm. And they've told us that this is one way in which they're trying to do that, and hopefully it will be received as that by the community. Shante?
Let's just discuss the statement that was made that, of course, the ANC in the Northwest seem to be totally oblivious to what essentially is happening in the province.
Well, you know, it's been very tricky. It's also been very difficult to ascertain their stance in all of this that is going on. But as far as the ANC is concerned, they are in full support of Premier Mahumapelo as the leader of this province. And this is one march where they will once again show their support, and they don't believe that he should step down as Premier nor as the chairperson of the African National Congress. And so it's really showing that yes, they say they are concerned about the violence that's been going on in the province, and thus they're taking.
All right, that was Oleboheng Khosilentwe from the Northwest, just giving us some of the details around that ANC march, which is set to take place today, being led by Premier, who is on leave. Supra Mamupelu will be giving you updates on that story. Well, still ahead to look forward to in the bulletin. Wedding bells are up in the air, and so are hopes for a new era of monarchy in the UK when it comes to race relations. More on the royal wedding when we return.
SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
News at 9. We go beyond the headlines of the day and breaking news to bring you all the angles and in-depth analysis of stories that impact your life. We are on the ball with all economic stories. Our bureaus around the globe are ready to connect you to events as and when they happen. So join us every day at 9 to zoom in on the day's big stories.
Hello, I'm Simpiwe Ngongan, and as usual, I'm in the company of the pearl of the show.
And yes, I'm Pearl Shongwe, and this is the weekend edition of Morning Live,
where we bring you news stories, making headlines, weather updates, and the latest in the world of sports.
Every weekend on Saturday and Sunday mornings, we bring you, our viewer, vibrant, exciting, informative current stories here on the SABC News Channel 404.
And we also put a spotlight on creative art stories, book reviews, poetry, and various topical stories. We also bring you live outside broadcast as well as live music performances.
All of this
every weekend between 6 and 9 here on the SABC News Channel 404.
The Palestinian Authority recalls its envoys to 4 countries following it after it revealed that they attended an Israeli reception marking the U.S. Embassy's move to Jerusalem. The Pan-African Parliament will today debate the issue between Palestine and Israel. President Cyril Ramaphosa concludes his 2-day meeting of the Global Commission on the Future of Work in Geneva. Leading with some African news this half hour, the Palestinian Authority has recalled its envoys to Romania, the Czech Republic, Hungary, as well as Austria after their ambassadors attended an Israeli reception marking the U.S. Embassy's move to Jerusalem. The embassy move and Washington's recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel has deeply angered Palestinians who see the Israeli annexed eastern sector of the city as the capital of their future state. Meanwhile, the British government has called for an investigation into the Palestinian killings. Pope Francis has condemned the act, saying the deaths will only lead to more violence. More than 60 people were killed and more than 2,700 injured.
The Turkish president in London, British Prime Minister Theresa May, called for an urgent investigation into the killings. The deaths came during protests on Monday as United States moved its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
There is an urgent need to establish the facts of what happened yesterday through an independent and transparent investigation, including why such a volume of live fire was used and what role Hamas played in events.
Turkey also reiterated its position on Israel, slamming the Israel government's attitude.
I am strong, so I'm right. It's with this mentality that Israel is evolving in the region. With these steps taken forward, Israel is an occupier and still raging terrorism.
Turkey has asked Israel Consul General in Istanbul to temporarily leave amid an expanding diplomatic spirit. Speaking to tens of thousands of people at his general audience in St. Peter's Square, the Pope expressed his pain for the dead and wounded and his closeness and affection to those who are suffering.
Molto preoccupato e addolorato.
In his message, the Pope said, "I'm very worried and sad by the escalation of tensions in the Holy Land, in the Middle East, and by the spiral of violence that is increasingly creating distances on the path of peace, dialogue, and negotiations. I express my great pain for the dead and wounded, and I'm close in prayer and affection to all those who are suffering. I repeat that the use of violence never leads to peace." Meanwhile, Guatemala opened an embassy in Jerusalem 2 days after the United States made the same move. The event was also attended by Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
There's a Guatemala street in many cities and many communities in Israel because we remember our friends, and Guatemala is our friend.
Primer Ministro Netanyahu,
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, know that the people of Guatemala will always be a faithful friend to your country. And from today, with the return of the Guatemalan embassy to Jerusalem, we are reaffirming our bonds of friendship and brotherhood towards the prosperous people of Israel.
In France, protests against the killings on unarmed Palestinians rocked the capital city, Paris. Protesters pointed a finger to some European countries for colluding with Israel.
For me, the UN and the UK are to blame with the creation of the State of Israel. I think it's mostly their fault. That's what sparked everything off. Now the main actors are the Hamas, the Fatah and the Israeli government.
It's not right for children to die. It's not normal for children to starve to death and not have anything to drink. Parents are there and don't know how to feed their children. They're afraid that they won't be there the next day.
Israel has also blamed Hamas for the deadly violence, saying the terror group encouraged and led the protests, which included attacks on Israeli troops and attempts to breach the border fence. Lehana Tsotetsi, SABC News.
One of our top stories today, a case to overturn an order to freeze Gupta assets will be heard in the High Court in Bloemfontein today. Let's cross live.
Therefore not there, compared to arguing the holus bolus case and ex post facto trying to excise facts that exercised your mind. Both exercises require that objective independence which resides within you, but the one is a harder route. And we would suggest that the strikeout be argued first.
Thank you, Mr. Helens. Mr. Hubert, what are your views on this issue?
I'm not part of the strikeout application, so I just abide by what you would say.
You have an easy task.
For now.
Mr. Gender.
Well, we submit with respect that the practical way of handling it is for both sides to argue the strikeout and the main case in one. There's no way in which your lordship can be expected, after an argument on a strikeout, to give a ruling this morning. So at the end of the day, we're going to have to argue the merits without a ruling anyway. And there's another factor, and that's this. In a strikeout application, one of the questions is whether the applicant for a strikeout will be prejudiced if the material is not struck out. That assessment is far better made once your lordship has heard the merits of the case, because you can then assess prejudice or not. Speaking for myself, I don't think we rely at all on the portions of the record that my learned friend wants struck out. But it will only be at the end of my submissions on the merits that you will appreciate how we do not rely on any of those passages.
But if we don't rely on those passages, Mr. Tengo, is there any sense in delaying the matter by making a ruling in that respect if they wanted it struck out?
No, with respect, I'm not suggesting that a court may not regard it as relevant, and we submit that it is proper, it is not new, and it has properly been pleaded. But what we do submit is that there is absolutely no prejudice, because our reliance on it, I can't guarantee you now that there is no reliance, but is incidental and peripheral. It is absolutely peripheral to the debate this morning. But you're only in a position to assess that once you've heard the debate on the merits. And my learned friend's only suggestion is that you might be insidiously affected by paragraphs struck out. With respect, a judicial officer is trained to separate out and disregard inadmissible evidence. And you're going to have to look at it and deal with it anyway. So that there is really no reason why this should be done in two stages, as if the judge is unable, in his own mind, at a later stage when he decides what's in and what's out, to disregard whatever is struck out. And we submit that it would cause unnecessary delay to have two big debates today, rather than to do everything in one.
Thank you, Mr. Tengo. I've listened to counsel on both sides on the question of whether the application to strike out should be heard first, and then only thereafter the merits of the matter. My view is that I do not want this matter to be delayed by anything, and I want the parties and the court itself to get to the merits of the matter and the heart of the application for reconsideration as quickly as possible. And for that reason, and for practical reasons, for that reason, the ruling that I make is will, as the issue of striking out should be argued at the same time.
As the court did. Thank you. Well then, my Lord, what I will do exactly that. And whenever I move to add passages that we say should be struck out, I'll deal with them in the flow of the argument.
Thank you.
Lord, let me start out not directly with reference to my heads, but just sketch the main themes of, or some of the main themes of the argument.
Mr. Ellis, can I just ask you something? By having in my possession the heads of argument that you have filed already.
I think they were short heads.
A minute ago you handed me another set of
yes.
Heads of argument.
Yeah, there were short heads filed, which was a brief summation of the arguments
yes.
that you would have had from last week.
Yes.
What I've handed up to you now is a further version of longer heads, which we've had to create because of the replying affidavit and the new matter.
I understand. You will appreciate, of course, that I haven't really had the time
to read the new heads. No, we barely had the time to draw them up.
But thank you.
The reply came in on Friday, somewhere in the middle of the day, and here we are.
Yes, I'm afraid there was very little time available to everyone.
Yeah.
To get to the point where we are today.
And we had to change teams. Anyway, here we are.
Yes, thank you.
My Lord, you will see reference in the head, you don't have to go to it, to the well-known case of Swissboro Diamonds. And to put not too broad a brush on it, what that says is that you can't merely, in motion matters, put down a pile of facts and then from those facts extract a cause of action or extract an argument that might have been available from disparate facts. What you do is you set out the facts, you plead the law, and you link the facts pleaded to the cause of action pleaded and to the conclusion. So without putting too fine a point on it, it's very much like particulars of claim mixed with the evidence. That's what motion proceedings are. Now, what you will find in the argument from the NDPP today, and very much supplemented by the replying affidavit, which we suggest in theme, makes out a new case in reply, is an absolute abandonment of the strictures of Swissboro Diamonds. You simply cannot say, because I said this and because I said that, I'll now make up a new cause of action or a new argument, not so much cause of action, which I can now rely on and which I've threaded together in reply. So tough luck to the respondent who saw one case in founding and was called upon to argue a different case by virtue of that which is constructed in reply and constructed in argument. And we would say you have to hold the NDPP to the rigors of Swissboro Diamonds. That's a first overarching principle that I would like to impress upon the court. Secondly, it is astonishing that the NDPP still would seek to find some significance in the so-called pool account. And if I could spend just a little time explaining this whole concept of the pool account before I get into the deep detail of it. And it's absolutely fundamental to a number of the so-called payments or transactions and to the many inferences drawn from those payments which try eventually to weave a web of suspicion of money laundering and parties who are in miss with each other. Let me deal with the question of the pool account. As His Lordship, Mr. Justice Jordan did in the preservation application, now that report, that judgment, is annexed to the papers. And without quoting from it, and without suggesting that this is a preservation application, and knowing the difference, by the way, between a restraint application and a preservation application, let me sketch what his findings are and what the reality is. Bank of Baroda is a foreign bank and is not a clearing bank. So, unlike a bank like First National Bank or Standard Bank or one of the major four banks, it doesn't have a clearing account. So, when you pay, for example, Standard Bank 1,000 Rand, it doesn't go anywhere except to Standard Bank. Standard Bank can use that money for whatever purpose they choose. Pay salaries with it, lend it to someone to buy a motor car, a bond, whatever. It just goes into an amorphous Standard Bank pool of money. And so too with the other major banks. When you're a bank such as the Bank of Baroda, and you're not a clearing bank, you operate as a bank, but you have a bank account with a bank, in this case Nedbank. So all of the money that is banked with the Bank of Baroda goes into the Nedbank account. But whose account is it? It's the Bank of Baroda's account with Nedbank. So all in and out money go into the Bank of Baroda's account with Nedbank. So if I had an account with Nedbank and it was account number 123, the Bank of Baroda may have an account with Nedbank, account number 124. It's just a client of Nedbank. But the money in the Nedbank account is the Bank of Baroda's money to do with what they wish. It becomes mixed with other money. There is commixtio in the classic sense of the word. There's no identity to the money. All that the person banking with the Bank of Baroda has is a credit with the Bank of Baroda. So if it's a call account, the Bank of Baroda must be ready to pay it back on call. If it's a 32-day notice fixed deposit, it must be ready to pay it back on fixed deposit, on 32 days notice. But there is no identity of money going from one place to the Bank of Baroda and into the Nedbank account, with that money retaining its identity as Rand number 1 of a series of 5 and waiting there to be plucked by somebody out of a basket. It's a mere credit. Now, with the Bank of Baroda, you have more than one person having an account with the Bank of Baroda. You will see some old favorites of mine, Ladysmith Construction CC, who I assure you have got nothing to this case whatsoever, except they've got an account at the Bank of Baroda, and they withdraw money on or about the same time as money comes in from Estina to the Bank of Baroda. You will see Mr. Atul Gupta, you will see some of these other entities have accounts at the Bank of Baroda. Now, the fundamental error made in the whole setup and get-up of the NDPP is that there's some identity to this money. So if Estina gets money from the Freda, for the Freda project, and it comes to the Standard Bank account, and from there it's deposited into the Bank of Baroda, that money loses its identity. It's simply a credit that the Bank of Baroda has with its bank, Nedbank, and it's in the Bank of Baroda's account. The fact that other people also have accounts with the Bank of Baroda where they would deposit, and you will see money coming in from some of these entities into the Bank of Baroda and money going out, does not mean that if money comes from the Department of Agriculture to the Standard Bank, to the Bank of Baroda, Bank of Baroda puts it in the Nedbank account, and someone else withdraws or is if money goes out of the Nedbank account to a party like Mr. Atul Gupta or Oak Bay, that does not mean that Estina's money was paid to Oak Bay. So, if a thief steals 10,000 rand and deposits it with the bank, and your lordship goes there and draws 2,000 rand on the ATM, and it happened to be with the Bank of Baroda in Nedbank, your lordship would not be withdrawing 2,000 rand of a stolen 10,000 rand. You would just be calling on the credit you have with the bank. Your balance was 20,000, you draw 2, you now have 18. A thief deposited 10, well, whatever happens to that, happens to that. But there's no connection between all this money. Now, one of the fundamental errors in the preservation application, and the subject matter of the judgment of His Lordship Justice Jordan, if I could call him Jordan J with all respect, he finds exactly that the money has no identity. It was for a slightly different purpose, because what they were trying to do there is follow the proceeds of crime, which is section 38, chapter 6. Let me just make that point very clear. The proceeds of crime are precisely that. And what they were saying was, where they wanted to pursue the proceeds of crime coming in from Standard Bank, well, Department of Agriculture, Standard Bank, Bank of Baroda, into the Bank of Baroda's Nedbank account, they could not pursue 5 million rand going into the Nedbank account and identify that as the proceeds of crime when withdrawn by Oak Bay, because it was just some pool of general money, credits and debits on either side. So therefore the argument of proceeds of crime fell down. But in this restraint application, they're trying to prove a crime, namely that the Bank of Baroda, without any justification, paid, I beg your pardon, Estina paid Oak Bay. And what do they rely on for that? In part, because Estina paid into the Bank of Baroda 5 million, or 10 million, or some amount, and because Oak Bay, for example, withdrew 5 million, they see a connection between that money. So, but they ignore the fact that these other entities have bank accounts with the Bank of Baroda. They ignore the fact that when Estina deposits money, you see a credit. If Estina withdraws money, you see a debit. When other people pay money in, you see a credit. When other people withdraw money out, you see a debit. So they conflate the concept of the money from the department through the Standard Bank being deposited in the Bank of Baroda, going into the only account that the Bank Baroda can have, because it has a correspondent bank, into one pool of money, swishing around there with no identity, moving from wherever it goes to wherever it's needed. And the withdrawal on the other end of money, they say, look, because Estina banked its money with the Bank of Baroda, and because Oak Bay withdrew money from the Bank of Baroda, or money went out to Oak Bay from the Bank of Baroda, that's a payment by Estina to Oak Bay. And it's simply not the way the account works. And how we prove that is two ways. The first way is Annexure EN8 to the state's own papers, which was Annexure 4 in the preservation application, gives Estina's bank account with the Bank of Baroda. So it's the bank statement. You deposited so much, you withdrew so much, you paid so much to somebody, and so on. In EN8 are all of the transactions. It's the state's own case as well. From the beginning of the Estina bank account being opened till the bank account coming to an end. And that, as you would imagine, with Mr. Joe Soap's account, with my account, with your Lordship's account. That is everything coming in and everything going out.
Yes, Mr. Evans, you can rest assured that I'm acutely aware of the circumstances surrounding this pool account, if I can call it like that. I've also read the judgment of the Court in relation to that. My question to you is this: are you submitting that the whole issue around the pool account is as relevant in this application as it was in the application?
Yes, because in trying to say that they were part of some large scheme where money was paid from one to the other, they are saying that payments were made to Oak Bay by Estina through the pool account. So it's part of the very essence of the charges that they try to hold against my clients. That when money comes out of the pool account, if other money from Estina had got into the pool account, that's part of the crime. That's a payment too. And it's specifically, when you go to page 126 of Skulkback's affidavit, he says, payments by Estina to Oak Bay. And they are pool account payments. They're coming out of the pool. So they must, and my learned friend for the NDPP will say that if we take money out of the Nedbank pool account, it's tainted money, or it's a payment to us by Estina, and there's no justification for that whatsoever. A next major theme is that no offences are sufficiently pleaded against any of our clients. When you get to hear our learned friend's argument on the merits, you will see him skip essentially that essential part in the heads. He skips to benefit without pleading what did anyone do. And in that theme, all that you see is with regard to the alleged reasonable suspicion of the commission of an offence is two things. One, a flow of funds, which is either fully explained by a loan or fully explained by attacking this pool account wrong thesis that is the gravamen of the founding papers, and rather, that these people at various times were directors of the company. And in fact, with Ronika Raghavan, we will show on the NDPP's own papers that what is argued as, what's she called, the central queen. I thought it was witch, but it's queen. The central queen of the Gupta Empire. You'll find that at the time of these maligned payments, she was not a director of the companies involved. We'll show you that in detail. So on the offences, they show from mere flow of money, we infer an offence, and from merely being a director, if someone was a director, that we infer that the director was responsible for the flow of money, and therefore for the crime we say which is evidenced by a mere flow of money. Now, when you get to either, they plead their case against us very intermittently. In counts 10 and following, we are charged with a narrower band than the rest. But when you look at the way that the NDPP has pleaded the case, you will see they throw us in holus bolus, and I'll show you the passages, in some conspiracy to defraud the Department of Agriculture in the way they plead their founding papers for restraint, and it's at odds with what they say in the charge sheet. So those are really the major themes. So Turning then to my heads, and I have to do an exercise here where I've got a previous version. I got my final version this morning. Paragraph 17. No. Which one is which now? This one is 9.
Oh, that's the old version.
No, this is the new version.
Has it got holes in it?
Just find my way.
79. Go to paragraph 71.
No. It's under the heading the preservation of property application. It would be your paragraph 22. Now, we deal.
In your headlines, the Sawa Trade Union Nahawu gives government an ultimatum: respond to demands today or face a 2-day stay away and a national strike. For Hawks confirm Ajay Gupta is still a wanted person in South Africa. This is as the High Court is currently hearing that bid to overturn an order that led to the freezing of the Gupta assets over the Estina dairy farm scandal. We're covering that live. Abroad, a referendum is being held here today that could allow President Pierre Nkurunziza of Burundi to stay in power for another 16 years.
It's okay, you played Barcelona, you should be okay. You can do better, to be honest, but my boys tried.
It's an opportunity.
And later in sport, Mamelodi Sundowns coach Pitso Mosimane applauds the effort of his team despite the PSL champions going down 3-1 to Barcelona.
Hello and welcome to SABC's Newsroom. I'm Shante Yankees. Thank you very much for joining us. Coming up this hour, we give you those live visuals coming from court as the Bloemfontein High Court is set to hear the bid in it being overturned with regards to the Estina dairy farm scandal. We will be taking that live. I'm not alone. Vena Kirtley is standing by all your sporting highlights. Melanie, well this morning.
Very well, thank you, Shante. Good to be with you and good to be with our viewers. We'll be bringing you your sports at 1:45 the top of the hour here on Newsroom. Back to Shante for your top stories.
Well, leading at the top of the hour, a case to overturn an order to freeze Gupta assets is currently being heard in the Bloemfontein High Court today. The Gupta assets were seized by the Asset Forfeiture Unit as a result of the ongoing investigation in more than 220 million rand Estina dairy farm scandal. Meanwhile, the Hawks say a warrant of arrest for Ajay Gupta is still currently active. Ajay Gupta is currently in Saharanpur in India. Well, police are also investigating the murder of a Netherlands police station commander in some other news. The police officer was shot and killed as he arrived at his home in Protea South in Soweto last night. Authorities are trying to establish the circumstances leading to the shooting. Preliminary reports indicate that the brigadier had just arrived home when he was accosted by unknown suspects who then shot at him. The senior police manager was then rushed to a nearby hospital where he was certified dead. The KZN man accused of shooting and killing a 21-year-old student from Mangosuthu University of Technology, MUT, is expected back in the Durban Magistrates Court. Tabani Mzolo allegedly shot his girlfriend Zolile Kumalo on the 2nd of May at the institution's Lonsdale residence. Mzolo, a former electrical student at MUT, took to Facebook shortly after the shooting to apparently confess the crime. He had been signed into Kumalo's residence by another registered student. Mzolo is charged with murder and possession of an unlicensed firearm and ammunition. He's been remanded in custody. A convicted murderer, Christopher Paniatu, will hear today whether the High Court in Port Elizabeth will grant him leave to appeal his conviction. Paniatu is serving a life sentence at the St. Albans prison. He was convicted of masterminding the kidnapping and murder of his school teacher wife Jade in April of 2015. Jade Lee Pulser for SABC reports.
Price representing Paniatu argued that Judge Dalen Chetty was biased and favoured the prosecution during the trial. He told Judge Chetty that other courts would find a different conclusion in the case. The defence says their client was convicted based on a video recording done by police in the car and added that Sioni's evidence is admissible. He added that according to Section 185 of the Criminal Procedure Act, Sioni being searched without a search warrant was a bona fide error, but the rest was questionable. Price again stated that Sioni was allegedly assaulted by police whilst in custody. Price questioned the court's decision that Sioni was interrogated, but rebuked the defence's claims that he was assaulted. State Prosecutor Maria Stander told the court that if the evidence was placed before another court, the findings would still be the same. He added that the defense just rehashed the old evidence that was dealt with during the trial. Jade Lee Pulser, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
Well, trade union Nahau has given government an ultimatum. It wants demands for better working conditions and the removal of Supra Momopelo as Premier of the Northwest met by today. If not, the union has threatened to embark on a 2-day stay-away involving all public servants in the region, as Sintling Lehehe reports.
A national day of action as thousands of Nehau members flocked to the Northwest in solidarity with their comrades in the province following a 3-month-long strike to better working conditions in the public health sector that have been compromised by the outsourcing of key functions.
8 provinces are a problem. We are not paid our money, we are not paid our assessment, we are not paid things that we are entitled to. We want to tell those who think that we are lapdogs, we are desk of the government, that you're wrong. We are going to fight.
The memorandum of demands was received by Minister of Health, Aaron Motsoaledi.
We have agreed with most of the issues that are demanded and we are doing them. But obviously some can be done immediately, others is medium, some will be long term. I'm not going to sit there and lie.
Meanwhile, the head of the interministerial task team, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, did not divulge the contents of the preliminary report about its 3-week-long probe into the governance of Northwest and said that ministers with departments in the Northwest will be in the province to map the way forward after it has been placed under administration. Nehau says, should government fail to respond to their demands by Friday, public servants in the province will embark on a 2-day stay-away. Sintle Inglihihi, SABC News, Mahikeng.
Well, a special provincial official funeral has been declared in Mpumalanga for the late veteran photographer Sam Nzima on Saturday, the 26th of May. A memorial service will be held in Parktown for mourners to remember him and pay their last respects today. Nzima died on Saturday at the Rob Ferreira Hospital in Mbombela in Mpumalanga. He is well known for his historic photo of Hector Peterson being carried by Mbuyisa Makubu after being shot during the 1976 Soweto uprisings. For the special provincial official funeral, all national flags will be flown at half-mast in Mpumalanga. President Cyril Ramaphosa says the veteran photographer will be remembered for his significant contribution through photojournalism during the struggle against apartheid. Meanwhile, loved ones will also gather for the memorial service of Supreme Court Judge Lebotsang Rani Bosielo. He passed away at his Kailami home in Midrand, north of Johannesburg. Well, Judge Bosielo will be remembered for his sterling work while serving at various courts around the country before being appointed judge at the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein. He also served as an acting judge of the Constitutional Court. His memorial service will be held at 1 p.m. at the Calvary Methodist Church in Midrand. Some African news: Burundians will vote in a referendum on constitutional changes that could extend incumbent President Pierre Nkurunziza's rule to 2034. The controversial referendum comes amid fears and warnings that the vote may lead to an upsurge of violence and heighten a three-year political crisis that has left at least 1,200 people dead and seen thousands as refugees flee to neighboring countries. Sarah Kamani reports.
Burundi's Electoral Commission has put the number of registered voters at just over 4.7 million. Campaigns for and against the vote have been marred by a clampdown on dissenters, according to human rights groups.
We're concerned that it's taking place in a context where there are serious restrictions of freedom of expression.
The international community has expressed concern that the referendum will spark renewed fighting in the East African nation, which has witnessed a three-year political crisis after President Pierre Nkurunziza's controversial third-term bid in 2015. Over the weekend, 26 people were killed in the northwest of the country by an unknown people. The attacks have raised fears of reprisals against those opposed to the referendum. Among the controversial proposals of the draft constitution is the extension of the presidential term from the current 5 years to 7 years. It allows the president to serve 2 consecutive terms. The draft constitution also proposes the creation of the post of a prime minister and only 1 vice president, whereas the 2005 constitution provides for 2 vice presidents. The prime minister will be appointed from the ruling party, while the vice president will come from a different party. It will be passed if it is approved by over 50% of voters. A yes vote would clear the way for Nkurunziza to run again in 2020 when his current term expires. The opposition says this is a violation of the Arusha Peace Agreement, as it would infringe on national unity.
But it would also bring into question the agreement on ethnic quotas under Arusha. So the revised constitution proposes allowing the Senate to consult on whether or not to maintain the ethnic quotas as they stand.
We are very attached to this Arusha agreement because we have reached many results, stability, reconciliation in Burundi because of that Arusha agreement.
The current constitution sets quotas for parliament, the government and the army, with power shared equally between the 2 ethnic groups, the Hutus and the Tutsis. The 2005 Arusha Accord ended a decade-long civil war in the country. Sarah Kimani, SABC News.
For more on the story, we are now joined live in studio by SABC African news researcher Velimsedi Mtiane. A very good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Essentially, just take us through his current term. We do believe that it is set to end in 2020. Why does he want to be, clinging on to power?
Well, there are a number of issues that would make Nkurunziza to want to stay into power. Firstly, it's the common practice recently in many of the African countries where they seek one way or the other to extend their limits. We've seen that happening in Rwanda, President Paul Kagame also holding the same referendum where the people there voted for him to potentially contest elections all the way up until 2034. We have seen in Uganda President Yoweri Museveni also making changes to the presidential age limit, which will favor him, obviously, to contest elections again. We have seen that also happening in the Republic of Congo. We have seen also that happening in many other countries outside of Africa. We have seen Angela Merkel is now serving on, I think, her 4th term as a German chancellor. And we have also seen Chinese president also extending his term limits there. Actually, in March, they removed the term limits in China, presidential term limits. And also we have seen that in Russia. So it's becoming a trend to see the strongman syndrome, where people they want to stay in power for extended periods of time. But also there are issues in Burundi which also cannot be isolated from the regional politics of that area. We have seen that President of DRC, Joseph Kabila, has also prolonged his stay in power. He was supposed to have stepped down at the end of 2016, but it's 2018, he's still in power. And there is no sign of elections taking place anytime soon in the country. And as I've said, that there's also an issue in Uganda and an issue in DRC.
So, in Burundi, constitutionally, what would the laws that Pierre Nkurunziza seek to change to enable him to serve another term?
This current referendum is very controversial because back in 2015, he sought the third term. He was supposed to have stepped down because it was the end of his second term, which the first one started in 2005 and it ended in 2010. And he started another one which ended in 2015. But he also sought the third term in 2015, which he is currently serving, is going to come to an end in 2020. But now, if you look into that, now he wants to change the constitution so that all the other terms are not recognized, but starting from 2020, they will extend, firstly, the presidential term limits from 5-year to 7-year each, and then he wants to serve 2 more terms. So it means after 2020, he wants to contest at least 2 more elections.
In terms of him wanting to contest the 2 elections, what is the basis that he would want to rule out the previous 2 or 3 terms that he's already served and the one that he's currently serving?
I guess it's self-seeking, basically, and this has been happening. Many African leaders who do not want to step down in power, but we have seen good example in Botswana where the president decided to step down. But in other African countries, it's very difficult for leaders to let go of power. So it is about self-seeking, and he's on a quest to dominate the politics of Burundi, because this is precisely a man that is not caring about the stability of the country. He clearly wants to rule up until who knows? Yeah,
let's talk about the reaction on the ground and the violence that Burundi has seen.
It's been terrible.
Yeah.
More than 1,200 people have been killed since 2015. But not only that, if we go back, we know that there was a 2000 Arusha agreement which ended war in Burundi. There was a war that started many years ago which killed more than 300,000 people, and then there was this peace agreement. Part of this peace agreement was that there is no man who's going to man or woman who's going to rule the country more than 2 terms, but is now breaking that agreement, which has caused the instability and the death of people and other people leaving their homes, fleeing to other neighboring countries, as a result causing other countries to suffer economic burden of taking care of those people that are leaving the country. The people are amounted to about 400,000 people that have been displaced in Burundi. It's a crisis, a humanitarian crisis for that matter.
Now, we do know that the United Nations, as well as the African Union and other non-governmental organizations, have tried to facilitate some sort of dialogue in resolving the crisis. Just take us through the interventions that they have tried to do and where they have failed.
I don't know whether these organizations, United Nations as well as African Union, they do actually have power to intervene and make meaningful interventions in trying to resolve this conflict or trying to create dialogue that's going to end this conflict. Because African Union, they've been allowing this to happen. It has been happening under their watch when Yoweri Museveni also dealt with the presidential age limit. It has been happening in the Republic of Congo, Brazzaville. It has been happening in Rwanda, the very neighboring country of Burundi. So they've been failing to make meaningful interventions to ensure that the leaders, they abide by the constitution of the country, that come the end of their terms, they step down and they allow the next leader to take over. And African Union seems not to be able to do meaningful interventions. And United Nations, for that matter, they have been failing to do meaningful interventions. There are interventions that they are trying, but I don't think they are enough.
Definitely. We thank you very much for your time this morning. That was SABC News African news researcher Velemseni Mtiane giving us the latest on the Burundi straps. Also, just more news coming in, breaking news. Christopher Panyatu's leave to appeal his life sentence conviction has been dismissed by the court. We will be giving you more updates on that. For now, though, let's take a short break.
SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
Do you have a funeral policy?
No matter the sacrifices you've made or the hours you've worked, you can't always say yes. Avbob's Cashback Funeral Plan not only provides funeral insurance for your family, but also helps you to say yes to life's little extras more often. Because for every 5 claim-free years, you'll get your 5th year's premiums based on your monthly premium value paid back in cash. SMS Cash 1 to 41790 at no cost, and we'll call you. AVBOB, we're here for you.
If you want an AVBOB representative to contact you, SMS Cash 1 and your name to 41790.
Corruption both in the public and the private sectors needs to be combated.
Where there are clear cases of wrong that has been done, that must commence immediately.
Something is being done about corruption in our country.
Currency, even although it strengthened dramatically after the ANC's recent elective conference, could conceivably go stronger yet.
He had a soul that would not be for sale.
Stay tuned to Your World for your final news roundup, Monday to Sunday at 21:30.
Welcome back. Well, a peace march organised by the ANC in the Northwest is expected to start at 10 a.m. this morning. It was expected from the Montiwa Stadium. The march will be led by embattled Northwest Premier, who is also a provincial chairperson, Supra Mamupelo. The province recently saw violent protests in which residents called for the removal of the Premier, who they accuse of corruption and not doing enough to deliver basic services. SABC's Oleboheng Khusilentwe is at the march. Very good morning to you, Oleboheng. Just take us through some of the details around the march as well as the support that the march has received this morning.
Good morning once again, Shante. As you can see, we have moved from the location where we were earlier to the stadium where the march is expected to start just next door to the Mabatu Stadium. And talking about support, there's quite a lot of people starting to come in a lot of minibuses or taxis, quite also a number of different vehicles present here. I'm estimating just over 100 people coming in right now or already here, but I can see that there is more still coming in. They've come in, from all walks of life, different walks of life, young and old people are here. But to tell us more about what is expected to go down today in this march, I'm joined by Ndade Tidias Nebe. He is a member of the Regional Executive Committee of the ANC in the Ngaka Mudirimolema district. If you can come closer, Ndade Nebe, just to tell us once more what is expected to come out of this march today.
Let me direct you and the viewers at home. The march of today is all about reconciliation, healing, and the renewal of the people of the Bokoni-Buphirima province. We expect that after this march, we want to achieve, we want to reconcile with all people of this province. You know what happened, the incident that occurred in last month. We want to heal the people of Bokoni-Buphirima, to renew the people of Bokoni-Buphirima, to reconcile the people of Bokoni-Buphirima with one another.
And tell us about the few people that you are expecting here today. I hear there are people from quite a number of different religious denominations, the chairperson of the African National Congress. Who else can we expect here?
We expected the entire PEC of the ANC, the stakeholders, the traditional leaders, all stakeholders, including the provincial commissioner of the police.
And take us through what is going to happen as soon as that leadership of the PSC that you're speaking about arrives here. Take us through where are we going to walk, which routes are we going to use, and where we will end up eventually.
From here, when the leadership have arrived, they will give us the line of march. But from here, we are going straight to pass the traffic department and take Subukwe road to Muntua Stadium. It's where the match is going to end.
And what can we expect to happen at Muntua Stadium once the masses arrive there?
The leadership of the ANC will give the message of support in terms of reconciliation, healing and renewal. Also the stakeholders, your religious, your traditional leader taxi association, all stakeholders, they will give the message of support.
And just clarify for me that will a memorandum be handed to somebody, or what is this all about?
This march is not, it's all about, it's a peaceful march, it's all about renewal, reconciliation, healing. There is no memorandum that we are going to hand over. Yes.
All right, Shante, there you have it. It's TDS Nebe from the REC of the ANC in the Ngaka Mudirmulema district, just outlining for us the program and what's expected out of this march. For now, it's back to you in studio, Shante.
Thank you very much. That was SABC's Oleboheng Khosilentwe at the march organized by the ANC in the Northwest. Well, in breaking news coming in just moments ago, the Port Elizabeth High Court has dismissed Christopher Paniatu's leave to appeal his conviction. Paniatu was convicted in 2017 for orchestrating and murdering his wife, Jade. We'll continue to give you more on this.
SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
So TB continues to be the top infectious killer worldwide, claiming 4,500 lives a day. It is estimated that approximately 1% of the global population is autistic. So if you're on a medical aid, how well do you understand the benefit structure and how your medical aid generally works? And if you're not on a medical aid, have you considered belonging to one? So how much and what should you know about this condition? Is it curable? Can people living with epilepsy, for instance, play sport, drive cars, get employed? 7 million people around the world die annually as a result of tobacco use.
For Health Tip, catch Health Talk every Saturday from 9 to 10.
Shervin Bryceby's SABC News, New York.
Paul Barber, SABC News, London.
Tebo Mokobo, SABC Ufa Kozamono, Russia.
Neha Punya, SABC News, Saharanpur in Uttar Pradesh in India.
Other than that, I've enjoyed every single moment of it.
Takwana Ngatani, SABC News, Soweto, Johannesburg.
Welcome back. You're watching SABC's Newsroom. Well, today we're asking our question of the day. Burundians will be voting in a referendum on constitutional changes that would extend incumbent President Pierre Nkurunziza's rule to 2034. We've asked you to send us in your thoughts and your comments on @SABC Newsroom Twitter. Let's have a look at some of your views that have already come in this morning. Well, Alpha says, well, we are in Africa, aren't we? Look at our old age parliament. Lekhasa says, that's unfair. How could a president lead for a long time? Thank you very much for participating and sending us some of your views with regards to that. Our poll we're asking is, should companies be fined for failing to ensure equal pay for male and female employees? We do know that this was one of the issues that was actually discussed at that ILO talk in Geneva, where President Cyril Ramaphosa was in attendance. Well, 84% of you are saying yes, 16 are saying no, just over 600 votes coming in. Let's have a look at some of your comments behind those numbers and why possibly some 16% of you are saying no. Well, Barry says, yes, companies should be fined for failing to pay equal pay for males and females, but only if they are doing the same jobs. Tebe says, what is the difference between a woman and a man? We are all the same and equal, so we must get equal salaries. Yeah, definitely. Different views and mixed views coming in on that issue. Let's have a look at some other news headlines making headlines globally, or rather continentally, in the African continent this morning. We'll start off in South Africa. The Citizen is reporting that Justice Minister Michael Masutu confirms that he is in talks with the United Arab Emirates to fast-track bilateral agreements to specifically have members of the Gupta family repatriated to South Africa to answer questions. The Jornal de Angola says a total of 105 people died of drowning in Luanda during a 2017-2018 bathing season. This is according to a spokesperson for the Provincial Command of Civil Protection and Fire Brigade, Faustino Manguez, revealing this yesterday. Namibia. The Namibian is reporting that Works Minister John Motorwa has warned the Trans-Namib board to stop ignoring him, and that their decision to suspend a fellow board member, Dantagos Jimmy Melali, was illegal. And still coming up, for wedding bells are in the air, and so are hopes for a new era of monarchy in the UK when it comes to race relations. More on the royal wedding when we come back.
SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
News at 9. We go beyond the headlines of the day and breaking news to bring you all the angles and in-depth analysis of stories that impact your life. We are on the ball with all economic stories. Our bureaus around the globe are ready to connect you to events as and when they happen. So join us every day at 9 to zoom in on the day's big stories.
A very good morning to you, and thank you so much indeed for choosing Morning Live.
But I want to know the basic thing.
Griselda Lewis, SABC News, in Parktown, Johannesburg.
Zimbabwe, Mzondeli Beji, SABC News, Luanda, Angola.
Let's take a look at your market indicators.
Thanks for staying with Morning Live. Let's bring you your sports news.
Let's take a look at your satellite image.
Set the agenda for the day with Morning Live.
Palestinian Authority has recalled its envoys to Romania, the Czech Republic, Hungary, as well as Austria after their ambassadors attended an Israeli reception marking the U.S. Embassy's move to Jerusalem. The Pan-African Parliament will today debate the issue between Palestine and Israel. President Cyril Ramaphosa has concluded his two-day meeting of the Global Commission on the Future of Work, which he was co-chairing with Prime Minister of Sweden, Stefan Löfven, in Geneva. Well, leading at the half hour, the Palestinian Authority has recalled its envoys to Romania, the Czech Republic, Hungary and Austria after their ambassadors attended an Israeli reception marking the U.S. Embassy's move to Jerusalem. The embassy's move and Washington's recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel has deeply angered Palestinians who see the Israeli-annexed eastern sector of the city as their capital of their future state. Meanwhile, the British government has called for an investigation into the Palestinian killings. Pope Francis has condemned the act, saying the deaths will only lead to more violence. More than 60 people were killed and more than 2,700 injured. For more on the latest in Israel, we are joined on the line by journalist Waji Abdu Dafira, who is at the Gaza border this morning. A very good morning to you, Waji. Thank you very much for joining us. What essentially is the situation on the ground at the moment? Good morning, Waji. Can you hear me? All right, we are still trying to get Raji as we try to communicate with him. He is coming to us telephonically from the Gaza border. We will be working on that signal just to get a bit of a sense on the situation as well as what's been happening along the Gaza border. Well, the South African embassy in Lesotho, in some other news, has celebrated the 24th anniversary of the democratic transition. The breakthrough has marked the country's re-entry to the global community of nations. Well, this year marks the centenary of political icons Albertina Sisulu and former President Nelson Mandela.
Celebration of the Freedom Day is a stark reminder of people that have lost their lives. 30 South Africans and 12 Basotho lost their life in the 1982 massacre.
Lesotho also paid a heavy price. South Africa is and will be forever indebted to Basotho for their sacrifices and suffering in this regard.
But these countries have decided to work together to realize the economic emancipation. They have signed a joint bilateral agreement.
We view the JBCC as the most appropriate platform which will be dealing with the perennial problems and challenges of immigration which we're experiencing at our borders, especially Maseru and Maputo border posts.
Teething problems which led to the delay in implementation of Phase 2 of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project are being resolved. But there is still more challenges threatening further delays.
The continuing issuing of mining licenses within the environmentally sensitive areas of the dams, which poses a danger of environmental degradation and ultimately the contamination of the water. The speedy processing and issuing of permits for technical staff working in the project. The processing and issuing of tax clearance certificates for companies which are working in the project.
Lesotho government wished the Republic of South Africa a happy 24th Freedom Day and has welcomed the cordial working relations and promised to reciprocate.
Indeed, Basotho men and women joined the struggle at the vanguard, if not center, either from the mines in the Republic or here at home. The brutal apartheid regime did not hesitate to impose blockade at our borders, nor did the regime refrain from their brutal launch of bullets and missiles at our people in South Africa. We are looking forward to hosting our joint bilateral Commission of Cooperation meeting, the earliest within this year, 2018.
High-ranking government officials, close relatives of those who lost their lives, joined to celebrate with the Republic of South Africa to commemorate this day. Trapelang Khatebe, SABC News, Maseru, Lesotho.
Well, the Pan-African Parliament's decision to close the presentation of its audit and public accounts to the media and observers has intensified calls for a forensic audit of the Parliament. A letter from South African MP Santosh Kalyan calls on the Department of International Relations audit of South Africa's contribution to the Pan-African Parliament.
Been doing every business in open until we have come to discuss the financial matters of this assembly. So the message we are sending to the public is that there are things that we want to hide from our accounts.
MPs objecting to the Pan-African Parliament Bureau decision to close proceedings during presentation of Parliament audit and public accounts.
Which rule did the Bureau use to decide that this is a closed session, and what is the reasoning behind it? I think that we are entitled to an explanation.
But overruled.
The elections of the Parliament are public unless the Bureau decides otherwise, and the Bureau did decide otherwise. People just circulated information, wrong information. This is why we have been losing our partners.
So the media and observers reluctantly walked out, and inside, MPs felt that the report had no anomalies that warranted the closed session, except the issue of officials that are given allowances when they travel, who have not accounted or returned the money.
There are some officials that owe money, and it has been going on for quite some time because the same issue was raised last year. But these officials have been given until the end of May to pay it back, and that is why they were not named.
For its part, South Africa has been called on to take action.
The call has been made. Minister Lindiwe Sisulu has accepted that there are several problems and that she will communicate with the delegation on the way forward.
He actually ran an election, won an election, knowing very well that in a couple of months he might not be a member of parliament. As a result, they are having elections back in Cameroon. It would be questionable as to what real impact will that have on the financial implications.
The sitting concludes on Thursday. Yet another sitting of the Pan-African Parliament that has shed light on loopholes that some say are taken advantage of. Some MPs are not happy and they want changes and amendments to those rules, but it remains to be seen if that can be done. For now, the session ends on Thursday with a motion on Palestine. Ntakwana Ngatani, SABC News, Midrand.
Take a short break from your news. When we come back, Belen Kirtley standing by with all your sporting highlights. Asal.
SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
This is your midday report. Good afternoon.
I will be faithful.
I assume as President of the Republic of Kenya.
Let's take a look at how African markets and currencies are performing now.
The central bankers say the success of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is just a bubble.
Breaking stories, detailed economy and sport. Tune into Midday Report every Monday to Friday from 12 p.m.
No. Yes. Yes.
Sports Live every Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom. Good day to you. Let's bring you your sports news. Black Leopards have drawn first blood in the NFT playoffs. They beat Platinum Stars 1-0 in the opening match at the Thohoyandou Stadium in Limpopo. There was nothing that separated the sides at the interval, but 25 minutes before the referee's final whistle, the home side took the lead, courtesy of Pachachedzo Nange's goal. And that was enough to decide the match. The next playoff game is on Sunday when Jomo Cosmos host Black Leopards at the Vosloorus Stadium. Closely related to that story, judgment has been reserved in the Ajax Cape Town application to the South Gauteng High Court for an urgent interdict to stop the promotion relegation playoffs from going ahead. The matter was brought to court following a ruling by the SAFA arbitration to dock Ajax 7 points for playing Zimbabwean striker Tendai Ndoro. The ruling subsequently relegated Ajax to the National First Division and elevated Platinum Stars to the playoffs. Ajax argued through their legal representatives that the club was to pursue an urgent review of the SAFA arbitrator's finding. It therefore sought an interdict by the court to stop the playoffs from continuing. The decision by arbitrator William Mokari Senior Counsel found Ajax guilty of fielding Ndoro when they were in contravention of FIFA rules, therefore forfeiting points from 3 matches. These were wins against Platinum Stars and SuperSport United and a draw against Polokwane City. The PSL was of the view that a postponement of the playoff matches could disrupt the commencement of the upcoming ABSA Premiership season. Platinum Stars argued that the court application was not an urgent matter as there had been arbitration postponements due to the unavailability of Ajax. And Spanish La Liga champions Barcelona are the winners of the Nelson Mandela Centenary Cup, this after recording a comfortable 3-1 victory over Mamelodi Sundowns. It is the second loss that Sundowns have suffered at the hands of the Spanish Giants, having gone down 2-1 in their previous meeting back in 2007.
For the visiting Catalans, and a real opportunity, a thunderous strike sent home by Ousmane Dembele. The 21-year-old
ijoga bonito anesifana ke manje bazama ukuhlanganisa nango Suarez ijeketsheni iphatha lifake emgodini nango Suarez Kennedy Mweni oqeda ngena ke manje elithinta lapha ke naba beganga ke futhi abayisanta nalithuba Kalakata ngena namadoda nango Tawu ayikhona ufuna ukuvila nalithuba Kalakata
Well, today's sports question was related to last night's match at the FNB Stadium to mark 100 years of Nelson Mandela. What did you make of the Sundowns Barcelona match? That's what you were asking today on social media at SABC Newsroom. Here's what a couple of you had to say. Timbinkosi Njaya says, Mamelodi Sundowns, they played good football and created a lot of clear chances. Finishing was poor though, and they could have done better. Percy Tautibocha Langeman and a header from Wayne Arnson. True to Self says exactly what the doctor ordered. It was splendid. Moipone Hoete says it was a great match for Sundowns. So thank you very much to those of you that weighed in on our question for the day. What did you make of the Barcelona Mamelodi Sundowns match? You can still get involved at SABC Newsroom. We continue our sports bulletin with this football news. Spanish giants Atletico Madrid were crowned Europa Cup winners for the third time in 9 years. Atletico beat a hapless Olympique Marseille 3-0 in the final in Lyon in France last night.
Atletico forward Antoine Griezmann was the star of the show. He struck in the 21st minute after a slip-up by Andre Zambo Anguissa.
Atleti in front, and in front in a flash. It had to be Antoine Griezmann.
Marseille suffered another major blow 10 minutes later. Captain Dimitri Payet left the field in tears, an injury doubt before the game. His presence for France in next month's World Cup in Russia now also in doubt. The French side, however, kept on fighting and trailed Atletico 1-0 at the break. But fans of the Spanish club did not have to wait long to celebrate in the second half. Griezmann scored his second goal of the night and his 30th for the club this season.
Majestic!
2 minutes from time, Atletico captain Gabi sealed the deal for the Spaniards, and coach Diego Simeone became only the second manager to lift the Europa Cup more than once.
There's always a bit of sadness. At least that is what happens to me, because it's very hard to reach this level. It's hard to get all the players to get up to this level of commitment. Once you become the champion, the day after, you have to start from scratch again. And you need to bring this team to that level of commitment and hard work, and that's tough.
Atletico have been one of Europe's most consistent teams in recent years. They're second in the Spanish La Liga competition and remain on course for a top 3 finish for the 6th consecutive season. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
In rugby news now, Andre Pollard will lead the Bulls in Buenos Aires when they take on the Jaguares in their crucial Super Rugby clash. The match is a battle between second and third on the South African Conference log, with the Pretoria outfits out of the playoff spot with the same number of points as the Argentinian team, but with fewer wins. Pollard takes over the captaincy from Burger Oerendal, one of 3 players out injured from the team that beat the Sharks in Pretoria last weekend, and he'll slot in at inside centre. This will hand a starting debut to Mani Libok at fly half. Injured lock Louis de Jager will be replaced by Jason Jenkins, who will partner R.G. Snyman for the first time this year. Bulls coach John Mitchell named Trevor Nyakane as loosehead in place of the injured Lizo Koboko, with Conrad van Vieren moving into the number 3 jersey. Former junior Springbok JT Jackson has been named on the bench and will make his Bulls and Super Rugby debut if he takes to the field. In tennis news, South Africa's Kevin Anderson is out of the Italian Open after he had to retire due to an injury in his second-round match against Aljaž Bedene of Slovenia. In the other matches yesterday, Marin Cilic, Juan Martín del Potro and Rafael Nadal, as well as Novak Djokovic, all advanced to the third round in Rome. Cilic was pushed to 3 sets by American Ryan Harrison. Del Potro, however, had few troubles against Greek player Stefano Tsitsipas, prevailing 7-5 and 6-3. It went to 3 sets for Japan's Kei Nishikori, who beat third seed Grigor Dimitrov of Bulgaria 6-7, 7-5 and 6-4. Spain's world number 2 Rafael Nadal, who lost against Dominic Thiem in the quarterfinals of the Madrid Masters, erased that disappointment with a resounding 6-1, 6-love victory against Damir Zumher of Bosnia-Herzegovina. And Serbia's Novak Djokovic ended his recent second-round curse on clay court when he beat Georgian Nicolas Basilashvili 6-4 and 6-2. In cycling, race leader Simon Yates of Britain extended his lead in the Giro d'Italia when he won stage 11. Yates now has a 47-second lead over Tom Dumoulin of the Netherlands. Stage 11 from Assisi to Osimo was a brisk 156-kilometer track, taking in just a few categorized climbs. All in all, a relatively simple day in the saddle for the race leader in the pink jersey, Yates of the Michelton-Scott team. The peloton was packed together with 5 kilometers to go as the riders hit the cobbled streets of the old town of Osimo. At this point, it was every man for himself, and that's when Yates picked his momentum to attack and accrue more time on his rivals. Yates' surge forced Dumoulin into action, and that's how they crossed the finish line. Yates first, Dumoulin second, mirroring the general classification. It was a stage that Yates earmarked to make a move, and it worked, with the Brit extending his overall lead to 47 seconds. Moving on to motorsport now, ex-Formula One driver Felipe Massa, who will race in the Formula E Electric Motor Racing Series next season. The Brazilian signed a 3-year deal with the Monaco-based Venturi team, co-founded by Hollywood actor Leonardo DiCaprio. Massa was a Formula One runner-up with Ferrari in 2008, a single point behind Britain's Lewis Hamilton, and most recently raced for Williams before retiring at the end of 2017. The Brazilian won 11 races, all with Ferrari, in a 16-year F1 career. Formula E's 2018-2019 season, which is the 5th since the series launched, will bring the debut of the Gen 2 car that can hit a top speed of 280 kilometers per hour and will have sufficient battery power to last an entire race. Drivers have to switch cars mid-race at present in the city-based series. The Michigan University, where serial sex abuser Larry Nassar practiced medicine, announced it has agreed to a 6.2 billion rand settlement with hundreds of former victims of the ex-USA gymnastics doctor. The agreement with attorneys representing 332 women and girls was a global settlement, according to the Michigan State University. It resolved claims against faculty and staff employed at the school who were also implicated in the wide-ranging scandal. But it did not address claims against USA Gymnastics, the U.S. Olympic Committee, star gymnastics coaches Bella and Marta Karoli, as well as others, nor did it end a criminal probe of the university's actions with regard to Nassar's behavior. Olympic gold medalists Ali Razman, Simone Biles, Gabby Douglas and Michaela Maroney have all identified themselves as victims of Nassar's abuse. That concludes a look in your sport. There'll be more on Newsroom and the SABC News channel. For now, though, as we've got your weather.
Thanks very much, Valian, and warm welcome. Well, let's start with climate change. Well, we see that the more we emit carbon dioxide, our planet becomes warmer, and worse the consequences. We've seen a whole lot of Category 5 tropical cyclones, and we can expect that with more warming, more hailstones and severe thunderstorms, with also droughts like the one in the Western Cape for most parts of Africa and Australia. Today on our satellite image, we are seeing lots of moisture over the central interior, and thunderstorms can clearly be seen along the coastal regions of the Western Africa. Going to South Africa, still partly cloudy skies expected over the northeastern parts for today. Isolated showers to scattered over KwaZulu-Natal, and going to tomorrow, we're still expecting isolated thunder showers over KwaZulu-Natal, and moving to the central interior, partly cloudy to clear skies, and over the interior of Namibia, isolated thunder showers, but going to the coastal regions, up to 80% chance of showers can be expected, and over most parts of SADC, partly cloudy skies to very isolated showers forecast for tomorrow. Bloemfontein today will sit at a maximum of 21 and 20 over Pretoria, 20 in Polokwane and 19 in Mbombela. We are expecting partly cloudy skies over the northern parts, but going to some parts of Mbombela and KwaZulu-Natal, isolated showers can be expected. Port Elizabeth at a maximum of 25 and 26 over the city of Cape Town. We do have a warning of high fire danger over the far western parts in the Northern Cape and Western Cape for today, so please do take note of that and do not start any unnecessary fires. 26 will be your maximum in Bay Bridge and 22 in Harare. Isolated showers forecast, partly cloudy skies in Fiaranso with a maximum of 22 degrees. Windhoek, a maximum of 25 is expected for today. Over the central interior, we're still seeing some activity and a development of clouds, up to 80% chance of showers over Kigali. Moving to the interior of DRC, we are expecting isolated thunder showers, but going through the day, we are expecting a much better development that will result to severe and heavy rains over these regions. Going to the western parts, Brazzaville, up to 60% chance of showers to thunder showers, possibilities of thunderstorms expected for today. And temperatures in these regions, we're seeing 24 in Kigali and Nairobi, 29 in Mogadishu. Going to the northern parts, Addis Ababa, a maximum of 24 is expected. 33 in Bangui. Some showers can be expected in Libreville with a maximum of 29. Kinshasa, mostly cloudy skies with a maximum of 32 degrees with isolated scattered thunder showers for today. Over the Middle East, we're not expecting a lot, but a development over the interior that may result to isolated showers. Over the Sahara Desert, we're not seeing anything happen, but few clouds can be expected, mostly along the coastal regions, and going to Agadez with a maximum of 43 degrees, 36 in Cairo and Baghdad. If you will be in Riyadh, a maximum of 36 is expected. Going to the western parts, a development is expected along the coastal regions. Moving to the interior, up to 60% chance of showers. Heavy rains to severe thunderstorms are possible in these areas because temperatures are quite high. And moving to the central interior, the Sahara Desert, clear skies to few clouds expected. That is all. Ndawiyandu.
SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
Technology is used for both positive and negative.
Some governments block the internet in times of protest.
With this internet blackout, it's impossible for me to do it, so I have to travel to Douala.
This act is a true violation of the rights of citizens.
In Africa, people are always coming up with innovative ways to use technology to solve some of their problems.
The more interesting piece of technology is actually the artificial intelligence.
AI, it's utilizing data to make your life easier.
On Network, we'll give you Africa's technology and social media news.
Catch Network with Spumelele Zondi every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. SABCnews.com is your one-stop digital portal to all the news you need. With a website that is easy to use on mobile, SABC News prides itself in being the primary source of public service content across multiple platforms. Watch live streams of all the big news events on the SABC News YouTube channel, which is one of the most viewed South African YouTube channels globally. And catch up on the best of SABC television and radio news. Follow breaking news on all of the SABC News social media platforms, interact with SABC News on Facebook, and stay connected on Twitter for the latest headlines and real-time updates by our reporters. SABC News, everywhere.
"32 nations, 44 matches live on SABC 1 and 19 SABC radio stations. SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
Northwest residents led by ANC and some church leaders are staging a march for peace this morning in the provincial capital, Mahikeng. A case to overturn an order to freeze Gupta assets over the Estina dairy farm scandal is currently underway at the Bloemfontein High Court. Abroad, a referendum is being held today that could allow President Pierre Nkurunziza of Burundi to stay in power for another 16 years.
It's okay, you played Barcelona, you should be okay. You can do better, to be honest. But my boys tried.
It's an opportunity for the visiting Catalans.
Mamelodi Sundowns coach Pitso Mosimane applauds the effort of his team despite the PSL champions going down 3-1 to Barcelona.
Good morning to you. Hello, welcome to SABC News. You're watching Newsroom. I'm Shante Yankees. Thank you very much for joining us. Coming up this hour, we'll give you live updates with regards to what's been happening in that court case in the High Court in Bloemfontein around that Estina dairy farm project scandal. Of course, I'm not alone. Valen Kirtley is also standing by with all your sporting highlights. A very good morning to Valen. Slowly the weekend creeping in. What can we expect?
Well, there's lots to report on when it comes to football. Last night we saw Atletico Madrid win the UEFA Europa League title, their third when it comes to that competition. There's that, and yes, a build-up to the weekend. It is slowly starting. That coming your way at 1/4 to the top of the hour here on Newsroom. First, though, let's go back to Shante for your news.
Your lead story at the top of the hour, a case to overturn an order to freeze Gupta assets is currently being heard in the Bloemfontein High Court. The Gupta assets worth more than 180 million rand were seized by the Asset Forfeiture Unit as a result of the ongoing investigation in more than 220 million rand Estina dairy farm scandal. The case was postponed last week to give the National Director of Prosecution, Sean Abrams, time to prepare and for the NPA's advocate, Wim Trengrove, to be available. Well, police are investigating the murder of a Netherlands police station commander. The police officer was shot and killed as he arrived at his home in Proteas South in Soweto. Well, authorities are still trying to establish the circumstances leading to the shooting. Preliminary reports indicate that the brigadier had just arrived home when he was accosted by unknown suspects who then shot at him. The senior police manager was then rushed to a nearby hospital where he was certified dead. An application for leave to appeal against his conviction by Christopher Paniatsu has been dismissed in the Port Elizabeth High Court. The application was brought before Judge Dalen Chetty yesterday. The application dealt with the conviction of Paniatsu and his co-accused Sinetembe Nenembe as well as Zolani Sibeko. Paniatsu is currently serving a life sentence for the murder of his wife, Jade Paniatsu, in 2015. His co-accused, Sinatembe Nembe, was also sentenced to life in prison for the murder plus 15 years for robbery with aggravating circumstances. Zolani Sibeko was sentenced to 15 years in jail for conspiracy to commit murder. Judge Chetty ruled on the application this morning.
As I emphasized in the judgment, the only victim is Jade. The product's heads of argument serve only to obfuscate the real issues and to inveigle me to grant leave. The submissions advanced by Mr. Price merely amplify the grounds upon which leave is sought and are, upon cogent analysis, entirely without merit. In my view, the contemplated appeal by the applicants would have no reasonable prospect of success, nor is there any compelling reason why it should be heard. In the result, the following order will issue. The applications for leave to appeal by the applicants are dismissed.
SABC's Jade Lee also attended the case and joins us on the phone line now. Very good morning to you. Jade, please run through the judgment that was handed down this morning.
A very good morning to you, Shante. Well, yes, Judge Dalen Chetty literally spent 4 minutes delivering that judgment. He called the submissions by the defense a regurgitation of facts that were addressed during the trial. You would know that defense advocate Terry Price has been saying that, there are circumstantial facts with regards to Sinatembe Nembe and Zolani Sibeko being there on the day of Jade's kidnapping. He also addressed Panayotu's co-accused leave to appeal submissions, calling it baseless. He said that, on the day that they were there were many discrepancies within the defense's submissions, and that the defense said that they were scouted by middleman Lutando Siyoni to carry out the kidnapping, but there were different views on was Sibeko there on the day or was Nembe there on that day. But Judge Chetty also told the court that defense advocate Terry Price's written arguments only cemented his verdict that Christopher Panayotu was in fact the orchestrator of his wife's murder, and that he orchestrated the kidnapping of her murder in 2015. And in the judge's mind, that established without any doubt that he was the one that orchestrated the murder. So basically, what the defense was trying to do was get him Christopher Panayotu, get him out, of that judgment, probably get him, a lighter sentence by going through that judgment and trying to find or nitpick at the different co-accused, that being Sinatembe Nembe and Zolani Sibeko, but not actually finding that. And basically, Judge Chetty said that, it is baseless. They did try. But after speaking to the defense, Terry Price, he did say to me on record that they will be submitting a petition to the Supreme Court of Appeal, and they will not leave it here.
You just mentioned earlier on that the judge, Mr. Chetty, handing down the judgment this morning, had said that the defense somewhat regurgitated some of the reasons. Can you take us through some of those reasons that Christopher Panayotu's legal team had applied for against the initial sentence?
Yeah. Well, defense advocate Terry Price, he brought a lot to the fore, saying that Sinatembe Nembe as well as Siyoni were assaulted when they were initially arrested. He brought a lot of old facts to the fore, saying that, Vuma Sonke was also assaulted, and that whilst they were in police custody, this is some of the reasons why the case should have been heard. He also said Judge Dalen Chetty did not take into account that these co-accused were assaulted whilst in custody, and that these were integral parts of the state's case, Also with regards to, the search warrant with regards to Siyoni, which is the middleman, and ironically will be appearing in court tomorrow for his first bail application. They're saying that there were no search warrants, and these were also little intricate facts within the case that the judge did not deal with. So really, they're trying to bring all of this to the fore, but the judge just turned them down, saying that, he dealt with this through the case, And it was a very long case. It was a 2-year trial. There were 70 witnesses that were called to the stand. And the judge just really feels that the defense is trying to do anything to try and get the co-accused, that being Senator Nembe and Zolani Sibeko, off, you know. But he says that to his mind, this is a regurgitation of facts and that they can try and take that petition to the Supreme Court of Appeal, but that no other court will find these findings, correct.
Thank you very much for taking us through that, Jade Lee Pulser, on the phone line for SABC News, as the court has turned down that leave to appeal of Christopher Panyasho against his sentence. Some other news stories this morning. A peace march organised by the ANC in the Northwest has just started. The march is led by embattled Northwest Premier, who is also a provincial chairperson, Supra Mahumapilo. The province recently saw violent protests in which residents called for the removal of the Premier, who they accuse of corruption and not doing enough to deliver basic services. SABC's Olebogen Josilenswe is at the march.
The march of today is all about reconciliation, healing, and the renewal of the people of the Bokoni-Buphirima province. We expect that after this march, we want to achieve, we want to reconcile with all people of this province. You know what happened, the incident that occurred in last month. We want to heal the people of Bokoni-Buphirima, to renew the people of Bokoni-Buphirima, to reconcile the people of Bokoni-Buphirima with one another.
And tell us about the few people that you are expecting here today. I hear there are people from quite a number of different religious denominations, the chairperson of the African National Congress. Who else can we expect here?
We expected the entire PC of the ANC, the stakeholders, the traditional leaders, all stakeholders, including the provincial commissioner of the police.
And take us through what is going to happen as soon as that leadership of the PSC that you're speaking about arrives here. Take us through where are we going to walk, which routes are we going to use, and where we will end up eventually.
From here, when the leadership have arrived, they will give us the line of march. But from here, we are going straight to pass the traffic department and take Subukwe road to Muntua Stadium. It's where the march is going to end.
Well, a special provincial official funeral has been declared in Mpumalanga for the late veteran photographer Sam Nzima on Saturday, the 26th of May. A memorial service will be held today in Parktown for mourners to remember him and pay their last respects. Nzima died on Saturday at the Rob Ferreira Hospital in Bombela in Mpumalanga. He is well known for his historic photo of Hector Peterson being carried by Mbuyisa Makubu after being shot during the 1976 Soweto uprisings. For the special provincial official funeral, all national flags will be flown at half-mast in Mpumalanga. President Cyril Ramaphosa says the veteran photographer will be remembered for his significant contribution through photojournalism during the apartheid against. Having a look now at some international news. In Africa, Burundi is holding a referendum on proposed constitutional changes. The main change is the proposal to extend presidential term from 5 years to 7 years, which will be limited to 2 presidential terms. Furthermore, the proposed changes would come into effect in 2020 and will not take into account previous terms. Well, this will give President Pierre Nkurunziza eligibility to extend his rule up to 2034. Well, earlier, we spoke to SABC African News researcher Velimseni Mtiane, and this is what he had to say.
Well, there are a number of issues that would make Nkurunziza to want to stay into power. Firstly, it's the common practice recently in many of the African countries where they seek one way or the other to extend their limits. We've seen that happening in Rwanda. President Paul Kagame also holding the same referendum where the people there voted for him to potentially contest elections all the way up until 2034. We have seen in Uganda President Yoweri Museveni also making changes to the presidential age limit, which will favor him obviously to contest elections again. We have seen that also happening in the Republic of Congo. We have seen also that happening in many other countries outside of Africa, we have seen Angela Merkel is now serving on, I think, her 4th term as a German chancellor. And we have also seen Chinese president also extending his term limits there. Actually, in March, they removed the term limits in China, presidential term limits. And also we have seen that in Russia. So it's becoming a trend to see the strongman syndrome, where people they want to stay in power for extended periods of time. But also there are issues in Burundi which also cannot be isolated from the regional politics of that area. We have seen that President of DRC, Joseph Kabila, has also prolonged his stay in power. He was supposed to have stepped down at the end of 2016, but it's 2018, he's still in power. And there is no sign of elections taking place anytime soon in the country. And as I've said, that there's also an issue in Uganda and an issue in DRC.
So, in Burundi, constitutionally, what would the laws that Pierre Nkurunziza seek to change to enable him to serve another term?
This current referendum is very controversial because back in 2015, he sought the 3rd term. He was supposed to have stepped down because it was the end of his 2nd term, which the first one started in 2005 and it ended in 2010. And he started another one which ended in 2015. But he also sought the 3rd term in 2015, which he is currently serving, is going to come to an end in 2020. But now, if you look into that, now he wants to change the constitution so that all the other terms are not recognized, but starting from 2020, they will extend, firstly, the presidential term limits from 5-year to 7-year each, and then he wants to serve 2 more terms. So it means after 2020, he wants to contest at least 2 more elections.
In terms of him wanting to contest the 2 elections, what is the basis that he would want to rule out the previous 2 or 3 terms that he's already served and the one that he's currently serving?
I guess it's self-seeking, basically, and this has been happening. Many African leaders who do not want to step down in power, but we have seen good example in Botswana where the president decided to step down. But in other African countries, it's very difficult for leaders to let go of power. So it is about self-seeking, and he's on a quest to dominate the politics of Burundi, because this is precisely a man that is not caring about the stability of the country. He clearly wants to rule up until who knows?
Yeah, let's talk about the reaction on the ground and the violence that Burundi has seen.
It's been terrible.
Yeah.
More than 1,200 people have been killed since 2015. But not only that, if we go back, we know that there was a 2000 Arusha agreement which ended war in Burundi. There was a war that started many years ago which killed more than 300,000 people, and then there was this peace agreement. Part of this peace agreement was that there is no man who's going to man or woman who's going to rule the country more than 2 terms, but is now breaking that agreement, which has caused the instability and the death of people and other people leaving their homes, fleeing to other neighboring countries, as a result causing other countries to suffer economic burden of taking care of those people that are leaving the country. The people are amounted to about 400,000 people that have been displaced in Burundi. It's a crisis, a humanitarian crisis for that matter.
Now, we do know that the United Nations, as well as the African Union and other non-governmental organizations, have tried to facilitate some sort of dialogue in resolving the crisis. Just take us through the interventions that they have tried to do and where they have failed.
I don't know whether these organizations, United Nations as well as African Union, they do actually have power to intervene and make meaningful interventions in trying to resolve this conflict or trying to create dialogue that's going to end this conflict. Because African Union, they've been allowing this to happen. It has been happening under their watch when Yoweri Museveni also dealt with the presidential age limit. It has been happening in the Republic of Congo, Brazzaville. It has been happening in Rwanda, the very neighboring country of Burundi. So they've been failing to make meaningful interventions to ensure that the leaders, they abide by the constitution of the country, that come the end of their terms, they step down and they allow the next leader to take over. And African Union seems not to be able to do meaningful interventions. And United Nations, for that matter, they have been failing to do meaningful interventions. There are interventions that they are trying, but I don't think they are enough.
SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
show to be where news is happening,
both locally and globally. For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates every hour. Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.
Palestinian Authority has recalled its envoys to Romania, the Czech Republic, Hungary and Austria after their ambassadors attended an Israeli reception marking the U.S. Embassy's move to Jerusalem. The Pan-African Parliament will today debate the issue between Palestine and Israel. The President Cyril Ramaphosa has concluded his two-day meeting of the Global Commission on the Future of Work, which he was co-chairing with the Prime Minister of Sweden, Stefan Löfven, in Geneva. Well, the health officials in the Democratic Republic of Congo are racing to contain a new Ebola outbreak. At least 2 people are confirmed to have died of Ebola in a remote village in the northwest of the DRC, and over 30 others are suspected of contracting the virus. The World Health Organization has released over 10 million rand from its emergency fund to respond to the outbreak. The WHO and medical aid group Doctors Without Borders are leading the response and have sent experts to the site. Now, for more, we are joined in studio by Dr. Rufaro Chatora, WHO representative in South Africa. A very good morning to you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Essentially, based on your interaction with the medical situation on the ground, can you give us an update from that?
Yes, thank you. The situation is evolving. About a week ago, when the outbreak was declared, we said that there were 21 cases with 17 deaths. As of Sunday, the numbers have increased. We now have a total of 42 cases with 23 deaths. And since the declaration, medical teams have been declared to the area, which is Bikoro, Ikobo in northwestern DRC.
Now, what plans are in place to prevent new infections from occurring?
Well, with Ebola, there are a number of interventions that are put in place. Of course, we have to care for the sick by putting up the treatment centers and deploying health workers. And to enable them to work, you need to deploy medical supplies. With Ebola, you have to have protective clothing. This has also to be deployed. But beyond that, we have to follow up for each case the contacts and the contacts of the contacts so that we can contain the outbreak. And beyond that, we also have to manage the burials so that we ensure that they are safe, because some of the practices that are carried out during burials are the ones that promote transmission, like washing of dead bodies or sharing of clothing.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, we have to share information. We call it risk communication about how the people can protect themselves. So all this is part of work that is happening within the affected area.
Yeah.
But beyond that, we also have to think about the whole country and the region as a whole to ensure that people don't move around and then cause further transmission.
Yeah, that would then be my next question. Can this latest outbreak be considered a public health event, or rather something of international concern?
We are currently looking at that. For an outbreak to be considered a public health emergency of international concern, it has to meet certain criteria. One, there has to be risk of international spread. Two, there has to be interference with travel and trade. And then, so that has to be assessed based on what is happening on the ground, and also the need or not for a coordinated response beyond what the country itself can do. So that's being assessed. If it's felt that it should be escalated to that level, then the Director General of WHO will call what we call the emergency committee to then look at all these issues and make appropriate recommendations towards that declaration.
The first Ebola outbreak that we had, the WHO was widely criticized for what was described as a slow response to the outbreak. Going forward, what mechanisms and contingencies have been put in place to ensure that the response is very, very reactive and rapid?
There has been many changes in WHO since the outbreak in West Africa. One of the things that happened with this outbreak was once the information was shared with WHO, within 24 hours, a team was deployed to DRC, and then within 24 hours, they were in the affected area with funds to support the response. And then laboratory support was available to enable testing of samples and be able to follow up all contacts. All this has changed. And then working with international partners, within a few days, the international partners were also in place. And so these are major changes compared with what happened in West Africa. And in fact, the last outbreak that took place in DRC last year was contained within a month. So that demonstrates that there's been major changes.
Let's talk about this new vaccine that has come forward. We do believe that the first batch of 4,000 is set to be released. Just take us, where it's going to be tried upon and how essentially does this vaccine work?
Yes, it's true. 4,300 doses of the vaccine has been deployed to DRC. Maybe it's on its way now to the affected area.
Yeah.
It will be used to do what we call ring vaccination. So if there is a case, then we vaccinate all the contacts of that case plus the contacts of that case to prevent further transmission. We also will prioritize vaccinating all health workers, local and international, who might be working with Ebola in the affected area. This, we think, is a major step forward in containing the outbreak. How does the vaccine work? This vaccine, fortunately, it doesn't contain Ebola virus. However, when it's given to a person, it mimics Ebola and then helps the body produce antibodies against Ebola. So that blocks the transmission of Ebola. And it was tried in Guinea in 2015. And it was found to be 100% effective. But it's still a vaccine under development. So we hope it will show that level of efficacy in DRC as well.
Yeah. Now, you in explaining, the situation and the processes, you keep mentioning in terms of the cases, the contact with the contact, in finding information in someone that has Ebola, who they've come into contact with. Just take us through some of the challenges that the medical personnel go through in treating the cases.
Yes. The first thing that we need to share is that Ebola is a forest disease, because remember, it jumps from animals in the forest to human beings. So most of the areas where Ebola outbreaks occur are in forests, which means they are inaccessible. This is the case in DRC today. Accessing the affected area is very difficult. So that's the first difficulty we are facing. So we have to airlift both personnel and supplies from Kinshasa, the capital, to Mbandaka, and then by helicopter to the specific area. So that's the first issue. Then there are facilities required for the medical people who are deployed to help with the response. That has to be provided. Then there are issues to do with the cultural beliefs of the people, which you need to understand first before you can deploy an intervention. Because if you just deploy interventions without understanding the cultural beliefs, then the people will not believe you, then you won't be able to be effective. The other major issue is that this area is close to the Congo River. The Congo River is used to transport people and products up and down the river into DRC itself, to Kinshasa, to Congo-Brazzaville, to Central African Republic. So that's a risk for further spread of the disease. So we have to put in place mechanisms to contain it in the area. So these are some of the challenges.
Definitely. We thank you very much for your time this morning. Of course, Dr. Let me just make sure that I give you your right designation. Dr. Rufaro Chatora from the WHO representative in South Africa, giving us more information with regards to the vaccine that will be rolled out in the DRC with the new cases of Ebola. Also confirming for us in studio that the cases have now risen, confirmed at 42 with 23 deaths and not 17. We thank you very much for your time this morning. Continuing with African news, rights groups and activists have been holding meetings in various districts in Malawi so that people with albinism can engage with authorities on how the killings can be stopped. Association of People with Albinism in Malawi, APAM, which helps people with the condition, says that there have been 22 murders in 146 attacks since 2014. Attacks against people with albinism have occurred elsewhere in southern and eastern Africa, including in Mozambique, South Africa, Tanzania and Burundi. About 1 in 20,000 people worldwide have the disorder, with higher rates in sub-Saharan Africa. International news now. North Korea has threatened to cancel the forthcoming summit between leader Kim Jong-un and President Donald Trump. They say if Washington continues to push Pyongyang into unilaterally giving up its nuclear arsenal, the summit will be cancelled. Well, Pyongyang also cancelled high-level talks due with Seoul today over a drill held jointly between the U.S. and South Korea. It denounced the drills as a rude and wicked provocation.
A sign of high hopes and grand ambitions for the encounter between Trump and Kim Jong-un. Trump fanned expectations for his meeting with Kim Jong-un, saying he would like his talks with the North Korean leader to take place at a demilitarized zone, and that there would be great celebrations to be held on the site if the negotiations are successful. Earlier this week, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the U.S. would lift North Korean sanctions if Pyongyang agreed to get rid of its nuclear weapons. Then there was an unexpected and sudden change. North Korea says it may back out of upcoming talks with Trump. The country says it would never give up its nuclear program in exchange for trade with the U.S. Today, the country's state media said if Washington keeps pushing the North to get rid of its nuclear weapons program, it won't come to the table. And it also called off high-level talks with Seoul.
북측이 남북 고위급 회담 일자를
It is regrettable that the North unilaterally postponed the talks due to the annual ROK-US Joint Air Combat Drills, after it notified the date of the high-level talks. Such action of the North is inconsistent with the fundamental spirit and purpose the agreement reached in April between the two countries.
한반도 평화와 번영을 위해
But weapons weren't the only sticking point. In an angry statement, North Korea's Vice Foreign Minister singled out John Bolton, Trump's national security advisor, saying, "We did not hide our feelings of repugnance towards him." Meanwhile, Japan said it will continue to prepare for a scheduled, unprecedented summit between Kim Jong-un and Trump. This despite Pyongyang's announcement that it may reconsider if Washington insists on unilateral denuclearization. In order for this historical summit between the US and North Korea to become an opportunity to progress towards solving these issues, we as a country will continue to convey our intentions to the US in our preparation towards their summit. On Tuesday, the US State Department said it would operate on the assumption that the summit is still on. Any cancellation of June 12 summit in Singapore, the first between a serving US president and North Korean leader, would be a major blow to Donald Trump.
Well, staying with international news, gunmen in the northern Iraqi city of Kirkuk besieged several polling stations containing election staff 4 days after a national vote. The head of the Electoral Commission, Riada al-Badran, says the gunmen put pressure on the commission to change the election results in the multi-ethnic region. The final nationwide results should be announced in the next 2 days.
The initial results in Kirkuk were disputed by the Turkmen and Arab communities of the region, which is also inhabited by a large Kurdish population. The Election Commission said on Tuesday that initial results from Kirkuk indicated a win for the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, a historic Iraqi Kurdish party.
We will complete the announcement of the final preliminary results within the coming 2 days and will be endorsed by the Commission Council. And after that, any electoral list which has concerns can present its complaints to the Judicial Election Commission.
In October, Iraqi forces backed by Shia militias dislodged Kurdish Peshmerga fighters who had taken control of Kirkuk city in 2014. This prevented its capture by Islamic State militants who had overrun Iraqi army positions in northern and western Iraq. The return of the Iraqi army to Kirkuk was greeted with relief by the Arab and Turkmen populations there. Saturday's elections were the first in Iraq since the defeat of Islamic State last year by Iraqi forces backed by a US-led coalition.
Well, wedding bells are in the air, and so are hopes for a new era of modernity in the UK when it comes to race relations. Saturday's marriage of Britain's Prince Harry to American actress Meghan Markle, who is of mixed race, is being held up as an example of changing attitudes in the country. But some critics warn that it's too soon to think prejudice and discrimination towards the black community have vanished. Our correspondent Paul Barber reports from London.
Dancing to their own tune. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle on a recent visit to a radio station in Brixton, South London.
Believe it or not, everyone is listening, and I'm in the same room as the royal couple right now.
As the daughter of a white father and African-American mother, Meghan Markle's inclusion in Britain's royal family is seen by many as a symbolic shift at the heart of the country's white establishment. The couple's wedding is being greeted with warm enthusiasm on the streets of Brixton.
Of course I'm happy. She's beautiful, she's an actress, she's mixed race. What more can I say? She's stunning. And Prince Harry is fun. So they're going to be a brilliant couple. They're going to be fantastic. Well, we are one, you know, color don't matter. You understand? You know, we are one. So that's nice. I'm proud of them. Yeah, and I wish them all the best.
Most of the comments I've seen have been people quite supportive and feeling almost quite protective.
Leah Sinclair is online editor of Britain's leading black newspaper, The Voice. She says their readers have been far more engaged in this wedding than previous royal nuptials.
It brings in a demographic that maybe weren't as engaged with the royal family, who may be more so now, who are more youthful, who are of a multicultural community. They see themselves to an extent. She's a representative of a family that's seen as unattainable, but she seems quite normal.
The royal wedding comes at a time when race relations in Britain have been at the top of the news agenda. The government was forced to apologise to the Windrush generation, the name given to those Commonwealth citizens invited to migrate here 70 years ago from the Caribbean, a great number of them settling here in Brixton. For many, the scandal proved that racism endures in the UK, no matter who marries into the royal family.
But the idea you could have a black princess within that white institution is frankly crazy. So she'll have to, and already has, if you look at a lot of the press coverage, but basically passed for white. So she looks like Pippa Middleton, or she's just like Diana. They just downplay the fact that she's black, and she becomes a princess, and everything that means.
Leah Sinclair agrees that Harry and Meghan's wedding doesn't necessarily herald a new era for Britain's black communities.
It's great to see someone like Meghan Markle, marry into that family. I think it does a lot for the representation of women and women of colour. But in terms of issues in regards to immigration and the treatment of, regular everyday people of colour, I don't know if it's trickled down to that just as of yet.
Back in Brixton, it's love and not race that wins the day, whatever the future holds for the royal couple.
We're all unique people, we're all humans. It doesn't matter where love takes you, you go there.
My dear, I just love it because color or race, as long as a person love each other, that's what I love. I just love in them.
Paul Barber, SABC News, London.
We'll look forward to. We'll take a short break here on SABC Newsroom. When we come back, Bill and Curtly standing by all your sporting highlights.
SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
News at 9. We go beyond the headlines of the day and breaking news to bring you all the angles and in-depth analysis of stories that impact your life. We are on the ball with all economic stories. Our bureaus around the globe are ready to connect you to events as and when they happen. So join us every day at 9 to zoom in on the day's big stories.
So TB continues to be the top infectious killer worldwide, claiming 4,500 lives a day. It is estimated that approximately 1% of the global population is autistic. So if you're on a medical aid, how well do you understand the benefit structure and how your medical aid generally works? And if you're not on a medical aid, have you considered belonging to one? So how much and what should you know about this condition? Is it curable? Can people living with epilepsy, for instance, play sport, drive cars, get employed? 7 million people around the world die annually as a result of tobacco use.
For Health Tip, catch Health Talk every Saturday from 9 to 10.
32 nations, 44 matches live on SABC 1 and 19 SABC radio stations. SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
Welcome back. Time now for your final sports bulletin here on today's program. Spanish giants Atletico Madrid have been crowned Europa Cup winners for the third time in 9 years. Atletico beat a hapless Olympique Marseille 3-0 in the final in Lyon in France.
Atletico forward Antoine Griezmann was the star of the show. He struck in the 21st minute after a slip-up by Andre Zambo Anguissa.
Atleti in front, and in front in a flash. It had to be Antoine Griezmann.
Marseille suffered another major blow 10 minutes later. Captain Dimitri Payet left the field in tears, an injury doubt before the game. His presence for France in next month's World Cup in Russia now also in doubt. The French side, however, kept on fighting and trailed Atletico 1-0 at the break. But fans of the Spanish club did not have to wait long to celebrate in the second half. Griezmann scored his second goal of the night and his 30th for the club this season.
Majestic!
2 minutes from time, Atletico captain Gabi sealed the deal for the Spaniards, and coach Diego Simeone became only the second manager to lift the Europa Cup more than once.
Bueno, que cuando uno termina ganando hay un poco de tristeza.
there's always a bit of sadness. At least that is what happens to me, because it's very hard to reach this level. It's hard to get all the players to get up to this level of commitment. Once you become the champion, the day after, you have to start from scratch again. And you need to bring this team to that level of commitment and hard work, and that's tough.
Atletico have been one of Europe's most consistent teams in recent years. They're second in the Spanish La Liga competition and remain on course for a top 3 finish for the 6th consecutive season. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
Staying with football, the 2018 Nedbank Cup final is upon us. Maritzburg United and Free State Stars will clash in what should be a mouth-watering encounter at the Cape Town Stadium on Saturday evening. In the semi-finals, the team of choice beat Mamelodi Sundowns 3-1, while El Kota overcame Kaizer Chiefs 2-0.
Stars have not won silverware in 24 years, and this will be their first cup final in 19 years. They won the Coca-Cola Cup back in 1994, and the last time they played in a cup final was during their 2-0 loss to Sundowns in the Rothmans Cup in 1999.
Mamelodi Sundowns are the winners of the 1999 Rothmans Cup.
After an impressive win against Kaizer Chiefs in the semis, the Luke Mayel-led troops are keen to finish the job on Saturday. However, they are expecting a tough match against coach Falu David's enterprising team. Prior to playing the final, Stars suffered a 2-1 loss away to Orlando Pirates in their last league match of the season. There is a huge incentive awaiting the winner. The Nedbank Cup champion will play in next year's CAF Confederations Cup.
Champions League and Confederation Cup is the highest level. So why can you complain when you're playing at the highest level? How can you not take this competition seriously? I think this country who has the nicest infrastructure, the nicest facility in Africa. You need minimum to have 3 or 4 teams, 3 teams in Champions League and 3 teams in Confederation Cup.
The Bethlehem-based outfit is counting on its seasoned players to come to the party on Saturday. Some are already in the twilight of their career.
Some of us, maybe we're heading towards the end of our careers, and we will want to leave that legacy that people will forever talk about. We try by all means with the youngsters to push them and to tell them to remain level-headed, not get too excited about it yet, not get too nervous about it, to try and express themselves and try and prove to the coach that they qualify to be in that team that is going to play in Cape Town.
It's an important match, as it is the first cup final for most of us. I'll be glad to go home with the winner's medal after playing my first ever final. We will do everything we can to win the trophy.
The match at the Cape Town Stadium will kick off at 7 o'clock on Saturday evening, and Imael is optimistic. The Belgian coach led Free State Stars to 6th position on the ABSA Premiership standings. He is one of the most sought-after coaches in the country, and winning the Nedbank Cup will surely boost his profile in local football. Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News, Bethlehem in Free State.
And in cricket news, the Mumbai Indians kept their qualification hopes in the Indian Premier League alive with a thrilling 3-run win over the Kings 11 Punjab. The Kings 11 won the toss and chose to field first in Mumbai, while Lokesh Rahul's 60-ball 94-run stand set up the visitors to successfully chase down the 187-run target. Man of the match, Jasprit Bumrah, led the bowling unit to ensure the Kings fell 4 runs short.
Goes for it once more. Few more runs. It's another 6. Yep. Oh, near this time. Again, and over the boundary. So back-to-back 6s for Krunal Pandya. Slow ball, and he's thumbed up for 6. What a way to get to 50. Pollard is back.
Needs K. Rahul's wicket. Few more runs. Looks in control. He'll bat deep into the innings as well. So that's the wicket Mumbai Indians want.
Jasprit Bumrah back. He's bowled 2 excellent overs. That is high from Finch. Who wants it? Pandya coming in. Takes it. One bounce for 4, but he's absolutely picked Ben Cutting's brains there. Slower ball, it's a chance, has Bumrah done it? He has! What a brilliant piece of bowling. He's got rid of the big wicket, KL Rahul goes. There is life in this Mumbai outfit yet. He does it, it'll be 4. McClenaghan's doing press-ups. The crowd are on their feet. The owners are happy, the players' wives and families are happy, and Mumbai Indians live for another day in Vivo IPL for 2018. They have managed to defend 186.
And so we come to the end of your Sport on Newsroom, and actually how we conclude today's show. I look forward to being with you tomorrow and with you, Shante, for our last Newsroom of the week.
Yes, definitely. Always good being with you in studio. Thank you very much for joining us. We do it weekdays between 9 and 12 p.m. From myself, Shante Yankees.
And myself, Valen Kirti. Stay tuned to SABC News for the latest on the Burundian referendum and all things happening in your world. Until we meet again, goodbye.
Bye.
SABC is the official broadcaster of the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia.
Corruption both in the public and the private sectors needs to be combated.
Where there are clear cases of wrong that has been done, that must commence immediately.
Something is being done.